Welcome everybody. This is I've already lost count of the number of showcases we've had to date. We'll kind of take you through a little bit about an introduction to the showcase. It should take about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we're going to do an introduction to the panel, introduction to the companies pitching as well, and we'll take it one step at a time. So everybody, welcome to today's showcase, where the focus of our event is on energy innovation. Our goal as an organization is to advance deep tech, and to do so through a variety of methods. First and foremost is from the side of the companies, to help deep tech companies to get organized and to start to get exposure. But before so, in the analogy of if you're going to the wood, going to the forest to chop down the trees, you better make sure you have a very sharp axe before you go out to work. And that's exactly what we're doing. On the other side, we're helping a compilation of investors, stakeholders from government, as well from city, state, and federal, as well as from major corporations, assisting them with their tech scouting and finding relevant small business innovations in order to solve problem sets or to be an interesting part of their deal flow. So our community is a mixture of innovators and stakeholders, where the idea by creating a community like this is to make so that the two can actually meet in an organized fashion where everybody knows what's at stake. Our focus is on deep technology, and it's very simple. Deep tech is the place where technology solves deep-rooted issues and challenges that we're facing today. Not to take away from standard technology, which is not as IP intensive. Those technologies themselves can also solve challenges, but what we know about core technology when it is research intensive is the room for impact, not just on businesses, but on society, on government, is tremendous. And of course, the more we put efforts and investment into deep tech, it helps us address tomorrow's challenges before they even arise. Our organization splits into 4 primary categories. One is the showcase, which involves events as well as introductions between the stakeholders and the innovators. But we also help with connecting companies to investors and connecting investors to innovative technology. We also help with the level of strategy, which is that sharpening of the axe analogy that I used earlier, as well as Kissing Frog Studio, which is our assistance in the studio and the design elements, so that those great technology companies can have some good UX, good design as well. And that's how our service is split. You have strategies and dual use market discovery. That's we know the technology itself, for the sake of technology, can be developed on and on and on. But in order to create a business around technology, a company needs to be firmly positioned and have full understanding of what its market is, but beyond its market, how to translate from technology into use cases. And those use cases, of course, are built around a potential customer. In the world of deep tech, that's more true than ever, because the technology development is never ending. But also, when you added the element of dual use, the fact that there's going to be a government usage or use case for this technology, as well as a private sector application of this technology, then the need for a clear market understanding is tantamount. It is very, very important for a company that is deep tech and dual use to make sure that they know where they want to go for the first initial steps, for the second steps, the third steps, and every step along the way, so as not to get lost in the technology. And once you have that understanding, you need to translate that into visuals that which compel the message, and you need to craft the narrative around the story. We have all been in those unfortunate situations where you know that there's something beautiful here technology-wise, but it gets lost behind the lack of narrative around the technology. And we work very hard with companies to make sure that the technology receives the platform because the narrative is clear. And that's connected also to the strategies and dual use market discovery. Of course, we put on pitch events. That's why you're all here today. And we also, between events, We do guided introductions where our job is for the stakeholders is to find innovative companies which match their areas of interest, and also for the startups to help find the stakeholders which will help them essentially to grow. The way it works with us is that we introduce them first and foremost. Before introducing them, we share information about the companies with the stakeholders. The stakeholders let us know if they would like an introduction to the companies, and if they do, we make that introduction. And then in a very clean way, we take a step back and we allow for the business to happen between the two parties. We also help with raising capital. As we know, it's a different ballgame whether you are going after a deal flow of companies for an investor, or if you're going after a deal flow of companies for pilot projects with government, or for merger and acquisition opportunities for a major corporation and the like. Our membership is a 9-month membership, which splits up to all these services, where we have very clear deliverables at every single stage. I won't go into them today, but it's important to know this is a guided process and it's a structured process. Why are we focused on doing things the way we're doing them? Well, the gate theory works as the following. There is tremendous amount of noise at the gate to get into the gate of a federal or a city or state government stakeholder, or for a tech scout for a major corporation or an investor. If you're an investor on this panel, without raising your hand, without stating the number, you probably view upwards of a couple hundred to maybe even 1,000 or 2,000 decks per year. And it's really, really hard to identify the real core technology for those of us that are deep tech oriented from that noise, which is based on maybe on open software, or doesn't really solve tomorrow's issues. And therefore, we need to create a network, and that's what we're doing here. As we've created a network in order to enable so that the right companies come through the gate. Those companies that are developing something which is truly innovative, which is truly has an impact on tomorrow, to allow them to get through the gate. The truth is, another limitation is usually, as we mentioned before, we get stuck on listening to a deep tech company where maybe the business sense isn't as flushed out as it could be, or maybe the ability to tell a good story is not there. And as a result, we don't actually get a chance to really see what that technology is about. And we're trying to prevent that from happening so that, again, we can fulfill our mission, which is deep tech needs to reach market. And of course, without the stakeholders here on the panel in the community, deep tech doesn't have a real good chance of seeing the market, because it tends to be that the R&D process is a little bit longer, a little more R&D intensive, and as a result, you need more partners, and you need patient partners as well. Our definition of stakeholder, alluded to it earlier, from public sector, from major corporation, tech scouts, and investors. And you skip through this also, but our role is first getting ready, then starting to get the exposure. And we do that through guided introductions, but also through events. So we run a monthly event. So if anybody who's new to the showcase, this is the Energy Showcase. We have a calendar, full calendar, all the way through to the beginning of next year. Next slide. And here is that calendar. July 15th today is the Energy, and coming up is Autonomous Systems. We'll talk about that in just a second. Next slide. Today's showcase is going to be split into 3 sessions. The open topic is, according to our tradition here, is a variety of tech. It's not necessarily connected to the industry topic of today. It's a place for those that are more eclectic in their technology interests on the stakeholder and panel side to listen to a variety of different tech companies. Afterwards, we're going to launch right into the energy topic of today, which is starting with renewable and alternative energy. And then the third session is based on supporting systems for energy technology. So we're going to be hearing mostly 2/3 from today are going to be energy focused, but we're also going to have the open topic, which is going to be a number of companies which are pitching from a variety of different industries. So don't be alarmed when you hear some. The first few companies on the Energy Showcase are not necessarily energy focused. Today's panelists. So we're joined by an amazing group, as we always are, but we're very fortunate to have some new panelists and some of those that are joining us for the second or third time. From Edison Partners, we have Aston Pierce. From Cisco, Udi Goyal. Dave Whitmire from Now Vertical Group. Justin Weber from First Midwest Group, Saul Cates from Thales Cloud Security, Tina Tasakawa from GC International, Sky River Ventures, we have Hayuk Jin So, also from Boston, and from Veteran Ventures Capital, we have Steve Kaiser, Dr. Steve Kaiser. So that's for the open topic. The companies pitching at the open topic are split into Omnitech Partners, BlockNet, Vendita, Cyber Infrastructure Technologies, and World Housing Solution. It's a great open topic, a lot of variety in the technology companies pitching there. For the panelists for part 2, which is renewable and alternative energy sessions, we're joined by Judy Lee from Energy Foundry, Alexander Rosenfeld from Climate Impact Capital, from Liberty, Dr. Andrea Rutalo, from Full Cycle Climate Partners, Kyle Adkins, from Nesta, Manish Mikulani, from Technip FMC, Dr. Deanna Grauer, from Army Futures Command, Desi Grogan, from Shimizu Corporation, Shuntaro Kano, from Anzu Partners, Josh Styling, and from Stanford University, with a focus on sustainability and energy management, Lincoln Blevins. Companies pitching today are Sesame Solar, New Age, A New Energy, and Aqua Metals. Lastly, our third session is focused on power management and supporting systems. We're joined by Judy Lee, who's also on the previous panel, for NAFIC EXWC, Bill Anderson, Dr. Bill Anderson. Now Vertical Group, David Whitmire, sustained for this session as well. From Lockheed and Martin, Ryan Hatcher. From Microsoft, Anna Roth. From Delmar Aerospace Corporation, Stanley Springer. From Technic FMC, Dr. Diana Growers is also participating in this panel. And so are Desi Grogan from Army Futures Command, Shuntaro Kano from Shimizu Corporation, and Josh Styler. Companies pitching at the third session are Thermexit, SensorLink, VIA, and ABM Nano. A little bit about us. That's our team. You're going to be meeting today. Myself, Josh Barone, I'm the managing director. Asher Identity is also on the call. Lior Moore will be joining later on. Yuval Herman and Ariel Schatz are our founders, always listening. Next showcase is on August 19th, so stay tuned for more information about this. It's going to be split into 3 sessions, as usual, an open topic, but also 2 very autonomous system focused, which are going to be autonomous vehicles and drones. And then our third session is IoT data and defense. Last words on our network. So our organization is part of a larger group of all deep tech focus. As we all know, deep tech is assisted by government in a variety of ways. And one of those ways is from grant funding. Our sister companies, Argentum and Eagle Point Funding, focus on grant funding. Argentum for EU, specifically Horizon and similar programs from the European Union. And Eagle Point Funding is focused on non-life science technology from US federal sources. Our organization, Deep Tech Showcase, merges between the two and assisting with all non-grant matters, which is, of course, connections to different types of stakeholders on the one hand, also for stakeholders to help with the pipeline. We're in a unique position considering the technologies that we're exposed to between our sister companies and also directly from the showcase. The companies that we're working with, beyond being deep tech, are also accessing a variety of funding resources and attracting, of course, dual use type customers. And as a result, they're also eligible for unique programs like the TACFI StratFi Match program from the Air Force and other public-private opportunities. Feel free to contact us. That's Yuval's email. We'll put our information in the chat a little bit later on if you have any questions after the event. Excellent. So I think we're gonna start by with our first pitch session. So I think we have, who's up first, Yuval?
It's going to be BlockNet.
Wonderful. So joined by Madhav Verma, founder and CEO.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on the time zone you're in. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us, Josh and Yuval. It's an honor to be here in front of the illustrious panel and such a such a fantastic audience.
Great to have you,
Yeah.
Madhav.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wal. So I believe you're going to run the slide deck and I'm going to just continue the conversation here.
Yep.
Thank you. So BlockNet, why do we exist, who we are? We're here to, we look at the scenarios, the problems that are evolving from day-to-day situations, and we've figured that there's an opportunity here for us to be existing. And we definitely stay focused in certain areas, and one of that is our focus through AI to solve for problems around procurement. Next slide, please. So, why BlockNet, the name? We obviously fiddled through some of the hoops and trials in terms of what our genesis is, how we kind of coined this name, and we obviously had this opportunity to be a business applications partner with the platform players that exist, whether it's Ethereum or the Microsoft Azure Blockchain Workbench and others. When we gotten started in 2019, there was this implied sense to get into building out blockchain applications. However, there was a shift in the pivot that happened in the COVID-19 timeframe, which just last year, where we saw the advent of the opportunities and the challenges that were plaguing the entire populations across the world with regards to supply chain, the procurement. And there was clearly a motivation to use AI, and that's why we exist. We've come up with Procure AI solution that is focused on delivering enhanced procurement outcomes, and we do that digitally. The objectives are being to create opportunities for customers and partners to be able to make data-driven decisions, to obtain higher business efficiencies and sustainable procurement through the leverage of the Procure AI tenets. And we'll talk about that in a few slides. Together with Anshul, who is my management counterpart, we are representing BlockNet here with minority women founders, Madhvi and Madhulika, who are not in this forum today, but they're our guide and mentors for us to be able to make an impact through this journey. Next slide, please. So problems, we looked at definitely laser focused on the supply chain functions, procurement functions within the B2B and B2C enterprises. I figured there were dime a dozen problems that do not really get addressed through either the full suite of ERP/supply chain procurement products that exist in the market, from SAP to Ariba to others, or through the best of the breed products. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. For us, the Nirvana moment was when we did our own research. We spent a lot of time. It was almost been, what I would say, 9 months that have gone in, or maybe longer. I don't know. Anshul, my colleague, is here in the meeting as well, and he'd be around handling Q&A post the 5-minute pitch to be able to explain the rationale for our product, and definitely handle all the tech questions. Our moment of Nirvana came from a lot of this research that we did, and where we figured that there are complex challenges around handling of the private data. How do we position our risk strategies in supply chain? How do we drive some insights for our spend? There are best-of-breed products that do that for sure, but then there's no holistic solution that exists to solve all of these problems that are highlighted here in this particular slide. And of course, we are cognizant of the fact that there is a endeavor and an impact that we can drive with the sustainable procurement to help reduce corporate carbon footprint. And there's definitely a focus from our presentation, as of course, product strategy here. Next slide, please, Yuval. Macro trends that have continued to exist. And these have been around the past too, but some of them have accelerated in the last couple of years, and more so in the advent of and the aftermath of COVID-19. The increasing need for corporates and organizations around the world, and the governments around the world, to reduce costs, supply risks, being able to create digital transformation of their solution or their platform, the and create agility in their decision making, the analytical reporting capabilities that can be extracted from different products that are out there in the market, such as Power BI and other competing products. And of course, driving the increasing spend analytics, sustainability goals, and so on and so forth. Some of them are highlighted here for your information. Moving on. So having seen the context and having understood where we wanted to play in with our product vision and product strategy and roadmap out here, we realized that there's an opportunity for us to ride the trend. And that trend is more so in the context of where the evolution is. The evolution is happening from a cost savings function, procurement function, to delivering strategic value, what procurement can provide to the organizations. With the advent of the digital technologies, and obviously there's a merger and acquisition wave that's occurring, to a one-stop AI solution. That's what we are. We are representing, Procure AI is a representative artifact of the product that would be catering to the broad theme, one dedicated solution, replacing all the multiple standalone products in the market. So we are a solution-focused IP product-based company. Moving on. Solution, and let Anshul also chime in if we have time now, or we can handle the questions subsequent to this 5-minute pitch. Essentially, our procurement solution is dedicated or focused on sustainable procurement goals for our decarbonization of contracts, cognitive procurement, supply chain optimizations, predictive income forecasting, identification, reduction of risk, and predictive market opportunities. There's a whole lot of tech dive we can do in this with regards to the solution. I think we could leave it to the Q&A part of the conversation, just because of the lack of time right now. I'll move on to the next slide, and you want
30-second warning.
Core deep tech built on Microsoft Dynamics 365, Azure ML. We have been accepted at the OpenAI private beta, AI ML product procurement benchmarking through Power BI. That's the core tech stack for this product, for the solution. Next slide, please. Our projections are, we are in the pitch challenge for the Women in Cloud event that's happening on July 23rd. We are in the private beta group. Our 6-month goal is to do pilots with Azure, and in Dynamics 365, 12-month goal, general availability of the solution within 3 months of raising the required funding. There's a video here, we can play that towards the end. Next slide, please. We are here to seek fundings to the tune of 1 to 1.5 million ish of early stage funding to finance the cost of product development, sales, marketing, and business operations. We believe we can realize the ROI of that within a 12 months to 18-month period. With the required funding, we can definitely do all those pilots, SAP, ERP, and Dynamics 365 pilots with Azure as the hosted cloud. And of course, seeking partnerships with interested corporations, initiate conversations with interested investors, and MOUs with DoD stakeholders. Thank you. Next slide. I think that's all we have to cover now, and we're open for the Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. First question. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I mean, I was just going to ask, I mean, as far as core solutions, you'd mentioned kind of a long list of applications of the AI ML. What was like the main problem or value proposition, and who are your clients?
So BlockNet's core IP that we are pivoting to for this Procure AI solution is an end-to-end digital technology solution, which is powered by ready-to-deploy usable AI ML products. And we're pivoting to the Azure ML stack at this stage, early stage of our journey, that use algorithms to backed by user experiences and opportunities presented by the advancements that have occurred with backend connections to the central procurement processes and environments within the enterprise or the corporates. Using Procure AI, we see an opportunity for us to bridge the procurement and legal departments and forge a link for them within their broader strategic objectives within the broader organizations. Uber goals. Since we have seen an opportunity here exists that we have seen a lot of the MNCs and supply chain relationships getting stretched due to jurisdictions under the environmental regulations or challenges that we've seen in the recent past with regards to Suez Canal and the bottlenecks because of the COVID-19 that have occurred. I think there's an opportunity for us to leverage the tools such as Procure.ai to provide that much desired leverage for the procurement function in today's world order. Anshul, you want to chime in to that question?
Yeah, one of the use cases, Justin, would be that we have, say for the contracts, give an example, Madhu mentioned about decarbonization of contracts. When we are looking at the contracts, they go over and over, and there is a lot of, I would say, there are expertise, documentation that requires parsing by many different negotiators of the type could be lawyers or finance experts to go over multiple pages of a contracts, which can run into tens of such pages. And it takes weeks and a lot of manual effort to get passed through those negotiations, while through AI modeling, we are able to reduce that time and being more accurate and reduce this time from days and weeks to probably minutes, and address those issues right away through data and AI modeling. For reducing, example is, for example, reducing carbon footprint for an organization. So that's one side of this, one use case. And there are many other different use cases. Risks, there are many risks that we are not aware of in our organization besides what is internally available. The risks with the tiered vendors, what are they doing, how they are chained. The Procure.ai solution is targeted to go over those, enable those kind of gaps to the organization on the risk challenges. Similarly, cognitive procurement for strategic sourcing. So the areas that we are targeting through Procure.ai are the ones which are actually hidden through traditional systems like ERPs and being highlighted to address the pain points which the organizations today face in the lack of data and information. I hope that answers some of your question.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I mean, and really with a lot of these pitches, AI, ML, there's not a pitch I haven't heard that doesn't have it. So what I like to find out is how it's being used and in a novel new way, and the problems it's addressing. It sounds like the first example was contract abstraction, essentially. I don't know if there's a standardization element there, or if it's just using predictive to
supervise insights. Supervise insights. So if you are looking for a clause which is very specific to, say, decarbonization of or other terms, that the key terms that you need to extract from the contract and look for a vendor, or while you are getting engaged, you need to parse that contract and look at manually and say ANA, this is available in a contract. This could be applied to spending. This could be applied to negotiations that you do through the contract with different vendors while signing them up or doing MSAs or onboarding through contract agreements. So supervised modeling, what your organization is looking for, create those models dynamically through integrated ERPs. We are focused on Dynamics 365 at the moment. And all the insights that are going to be available are going to be seen through that. Did I answer your question, Justin?
Yeah. So in that example, it's abstraction of key terms as applicable to your use case. Is there an element of like outlining the contract and condensing it to like a standard format, or is it just showing you key terms that you've decided are important to your organization?
It is not invasive in any manner to how your contract would eventually look like, but it's the part where you manually spend time to go over the contracts and give you, well, you're onboarding a vendor in an ERP, and that requires certain compliances to be taken care of. Those could be modeled through AI and be available through the Procure AI software, so that when you are, it just replaces the human element through, instead of a human looking at it, you have the contract AI looking at it and prompt you on what's the next step should be based on how you want that particular insight to look like for you.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I mean, if anything, then it's.
Yeah, I mean,
would be what are the unique probably data? So you said data enrichment to an extent for the risk elements that are maybe not internal. Just anything that's novel, new, different, especially from the data perspective, is of interest.
Correct. So
and just hold on, I'm saving a little bit of time because we're a little bit over time already. It's a great conversation. I think we have to take one offline. I want to give Tina a chance to ask her question, and then I'm going to cap you at 30 seconds with your answer.
Okay.
Justin, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So you guys have plenty to talk about offline.
Yeah,
Sure.
for me, it's not a question, but I'm just gonna distill down to, I think the pitching today has some problem. Maybe I'm overly critical, but I'd like you to simplify the pitch deck and focus on, if you are gonna try to raise fund, right? Maybe you can personify this a little bit. Here is John. He is the procurement manager of company ABCD in this sector. He is using ERP, and this is the problem that he has, a headache. And then, the following 3 slides, this is your solution, how you help him solve the problem and how you differentiate from other procurement startups in the market. I think that would help a lot, because I think at the end of the pitch, I cannot, just like Justin, I cannot tell what product you're offering, how it's differentiate from other in the market. And so I think that's just my general comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Tina. No, I like that feedback, really. I think what you're pivoting to is animation illustrator.
Yeah, it's just like a real person. You're not going to solve all the problem, but what are you good at, and how that really make the life of the procurement manager a lot better. So I think that
and believe me or not, we've been debating that in our own internal meetings, and we definitely want to get that animation illustration in our next pitch for sure. Thank you for the feedback.
Awesome feedback, awesome questions. We have a bunch of other questions, which is fantastic. We're going to move on to the next presentation. If anybody else has additional questions? There's already a question from Dana Jensen from the Air Force in the chat. Make sure you go over to the chat right after this and get all the questions. I think we have another one also from one of the panelists now. So throw it in there, and spot on also, Tina, great feedback for the team.
Thank you, Joe.
Next up, we have cyber infrastructure technologies.
Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey there, Harris.
My name is Harris Masick, founder and CEO at Cyber Infrastructure Technologies, a spin-out venture from the University of Utah focused on quantum communications. With me is Mario Ramirez Arzola, our research and outreach manager, and Calvin Tu, our lead technical advisor. Next slide, please. All right, so the problem. As cyber attacks continue to grow in number and sophistication, traditional methods of communication such as cellular networks, optical signaling, and direct radio frequency are unable to keep up with these growing challenges. We look towards more cutting-edge technologies to safeguard our critical infrastructure. Next slide. It is our goal to bring the quantum internet out of the world of science fiction and into practical application. This begins with the integration of quantum key distribution, or QKD, with existing telecom infrastructure to create scalable and quantum secure networks, but will include improving speed and bandwidth beyond classical communication capabilities in the long term. Next slide. For traction, we are a proud recipient of an AFWERX Phase 1 STTR for dynamic systems mapping and analysis. We're also part of 2 accelerators, the University of Utah Company Launch Program and the newly formed Quantum Startup Foundry at the University of Maryland. We've also partnered with the NATO SPS Quantum 5 team on research and development related to QKD simulation and quality of service. Next slide. You may be wondering, what exactly is QKD? Well, QKD is a form of encryption that utilizes entangled photon pairs to communicate information that is secured by the laws of quantum mechanics. This makes interception impossible with existing technology, and you can see some notable applications are listed below, but we've also seen practical application in China with the development of the first integrated QKD network spanning 4,600 kilometers, and it's going to form the foundation for quantum secure information transfer for banks, power grids, military networks, and more. Next slide. Glancing at the quantum cryptography market, there's a couple key takeaways. 1, the market is accelerating with a compound annual growth rate of nearly 39%. And 2, the emerging market is quite fragmented, with multiple companies occupying the market share. Next slide. For our intellectual property, we have an exclusive patent license with the Army Research Laboratory for our free space quantum communications process, operative absent line of sight, and 6 non-exclusive research patent licenses to NASA. The top 3 patents, plus our own, concern physical layer quantum communications, while the bottom 3 relate to nonlinear signal processing. All physical layer quantum technologies are early stage, but we do leverage the patent schematics when conducting QKD simulations. Next slide. We currently have 4 offerings: modeling and simulation of QKD networks, integration and testing of QKD with existing telecom infrastructure, QKD network organization, and network management. Some of these services are also provided for traditional networks as well, and you'll see that the physical layer devices are not offered as a service. They are still undergoing research and development and are in the very early stages. Next slide. A SWOT analysis. For strengths, we have access to quantum-specific infrastructure, thanks to our academic partners, have QKD IP and know-how, and an existing contract with the Air Force Research Laboratory through AFWERX. For weaknesses, there's difficulty in finding good talent, with IBM having to process thousands of applications only to hire a few quantum researchers. And we lack a personal laboratory, which results in anywhere from 30 to 60% of our R&D budgets being allocated to research institutions. For opportunities, there's plenty of federal R&D funding for quantum, and an upcoming Quantum Investor Summit at the University of Maryland. For threats, we have the main quantum company in the US, Magic, a QKD network startup, Alero Quantum, but it mostly focuses on network visualization, and the cloud security startup in the UK that claims to have encryption technology on par with QKD. I will add that because of the state of quantum, direct competition is virtually non-existent. There's plenty of space to collaborate in this area. Next slide. Today, we're looking for corporate partnerships in the form of R&D collaboration or letters of support, an MOU from interested DoD stakeholders so we could pursue greater R&D grants and contracts, and we're looking to start conversations with interested investors. Next slide. Taking a look at our roadmap, you can see the company was founded a little over a year ago. We are currently focused on securing 1 to 3 R&D grants or contracts and plan to pitch at the Quantum Investor Summit come October. We've also recently been invited to the Innovare Aspire Summit, and we'll be working to establish a collaborative research and development agreement with the Air Force Research Laboratory Information Directorate. For 2022, we aim to get our first multi-year R&D grant or contract through Department of Defense BAAs. And finally, in 2023, we hope to begin development on the quantum laboratory. It says Utah, but we are considering relocating to Maryland to immerse ourselves in the nation's quantum hub. Next slide. For our team, you can see myself as founder and CEO, Dr. Midal Mehic is our QKD research scientist from the University of Sarajevo, and Dr. Miroslav Voznak, our QKD research lead from BSB Technical University of Ostrava. Next slide. Thank you. I'm open for any questions you may have.
Thanks, Harris. Excellent pitch, great visuals. Let's hear from the panelists. First question.
Hey, Harris, this is Saul. Oh, sorry, I'll just go ahead and just blurt it right out.
Pleasure to meet you, Saul.
So QKD, and I work at Dallas. QKD is definitely an interesting thing. There is some line of sight problems. There's also quite a bit of just physics problems that you'll have to overcome. And I believe the market's desire for QKD has been warm to date, at least that I've seen. Do you have any killer use cases you see as your early differentiator here? Because it isn't a big market, but it's a noisy one at the moment.
Exactly. We've noticed that so far, most of our support has come from the Air Force, and we mostly focus on helping them through the network layer. We focus on creating simulation modules so they can figure out ways of integrating QKD with existing telecom infrastructure. As we see, that's the only real way to create scalable quantum secure networks. I don't think repeaters will be a necessarily good way of pursuing this. That'll require a serious overhaul of our infrastructure.
Thanks.
Hey, Harris, I had just a quick question. You have, multiple products or offerings currently. Do you plan to focus on one going forward, or do you plan to kind of, upsell potentially later to clients, or do you plan to kind of sell across the product set that you currently have?
So you may have noticed that we have a bit of a disconnect with our intellectual property and the current offerings. Our offerings are pretty much under the umbrella of network simulation and quality of service. They're just kind of broken down so people can better look at all the parts of it. The intellectual property is something that we're getting right now because it's something we want to work on in the long term. We would like to get more into integrated photonics. The only issue is it's very costly. So we prefer to stay into a more affordable and reasonable business model for a startup.
Thank you.
Maybe Harris, this is Udit here from Cisco. I just would like to know maybe how this whole thing works with the existing network infrastructure. I would love to know more. Maybe you don't need to answer it here, but I think we can connect offline to know more.
Yes, we can connect over LinkedIn and we could start talking over email.
Perfect.
Pleasure to meet you.
Do you have a question as well?
Me?
I thought Tina had her hand raised, but it's okay. You can also jump in whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, I just had a question. I've actually seen a number of QKD companies, and so I'm a little bit unsure how you're differentiated from other QKD companies. And also, is this purely a software play, or are you having a software slash hardware? And is it compatible with the traditional TCP infrastructure protocol?
So we currently only work in software, but the goal is to eventually move over to hardware once we get the capital as well as a laboratory to do that kind of work. And can you go over the first part of your question again? I think
just, I've seen a number of QKD companies,
okay.
VeriCloud, Quantum, VeriCloud is one of them. There's another company called Qubitech is another one. There's a bunch of them. I just wanted to understand a little bit how you're differentiated from the others that are out there.
I have also seen a number of QKD startups, but when I actually look into it, a lot of them don't necessarily actually do quantum key distribution. Instead, they just use it as a marketing ploy because, well, quantum key distribution is a lot more difficult than it sounds. But the way we differentiate ourselves, we focus on the network layer. Lyra Quantum, all I've seen from them is mostly the visualization tool for their product. I'm not quite sure if they do anything beyond that.
Okay. Now, there are others that are actually doing the QKD stuff, but we can take it offline.
What do you see as the timeline for commercialization beyond the government sector?
Beyond government sector? And
yeah.
Well, there are some, for instance, Magic, the biggest QKD business in the US, has commercialized it. And I think they work with satellite QKD. So it is applicable. You can what's called go into the commercial sector now for a lot of critical institutions like banks. It would be useful, but the problem is key generation. So it's rather slow. And there's many classic cyber cryptographic tools that are better equipped right now over QKD. But I think as we get better fiber optic systems as well, we can launch integrated QKD networks, maybe in 5-10 years.
In terms of the hardware development, I think that's the part that require large capital. Right? What do you think how much you need to raise to really set up your own hardware And have you tried to partners with other hardware company in order to maybe reduce the capital requirement and push this through the market quicker?
I have gotten in contact with the chief technology officer at Connect. They come from Stony Brooks University and they focus on, I think, integrated photonics. They're working on a lot of fiber optic cables. So I've been considering, I think it's a good idea to subcontract as well as procure fiber optic equipment from them and us just stay in the network layer. It really depends if we get the capital to be able to move into that. Otherwise, we'll mostly be working with the University of Maryland and using their laboratory and equipment.
All right, thank you everybody for the questions. Thank you, Harris.
Thank you all for your questions and time.
Moving on, we've got our next pitch, Vendita. We're joined today by Doug Solinger, CEO of Vendita.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I will try to follow Tina's guidance as much as I possibly can since she's at the top of my screen. Vendita's been around since 2008. We have been working in the data space and actually helping with large organizations like IBM with the implementation of data systems, procurement of data for the better part of over a decade, built very tight relationships with Oracle. We recognized as the cloud started coming into the marketplace over the last several years and everybody kept transitioning over that, there's a real need for the tool sets that manage the data, to manage the tools that hold the data within most enterprises that are in those organizations today. Not everybody's going to move to the cloud. Most organizations are going to have some sort of a hybrid type model because not all data can move to a public cloud. Next slide. Here's the fundamental problem we're seeing. Just in the last 2 years, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, I didn't even know what that quintillion number was until I did the research, is being created every day, and 90% of the world's data is being created in the last 2 years. You can only see that problem getting larger and getting bigger and bigger as we keep moving forward. The bigger problem we're seeing right now is just the actual talent that's there. Just so recently, I did a study and we looked at there's over 500,000 open positions just around data and how to manage data out in the United States today through LinkedIn. Next slide. What are we really trying to do? Most data is housed in databases, either Oracle, Microsoft, or now a lot of open source databases. And and this is how they're managing those data today. Pam, the key use case here, as we called her in red here, she comes into work and she has her routine tasks that she has to do to manage that data every day. There's quintillions, millions of data coming in. She has to do these routine processes every day. And then guess what? She's then got to look over here to the right and pick out one of these different point solutions that's been in the market for at least 10 years that's going to try to help her with either doing a monitoring piece, doing tuning or support. She has to become an expert in each one of those. So we did a study on that and we looked at 78% of her day is spent doing routine manual tasks. Well, guess what the executives care about? They actually care about these special projects, a SOX project or a software compliance project that comes along. And now she's very busy handling routine processes. And what does she do? She has a very limited amount of time to handle special projects. Next slide. This is where we came up with Moz. Okay, we did work with Gartner Group and they have recognized this. We're the only single pane of glass to handle all those routine processes across multiple databases that are out there. Oracle, Microsoft, and your 3 major open source databases are out there. When we look at the study that we did, looking at a couple of different database organizations that manage that, we looked at how Moz can actually reduce the amount of routine processes, the amount of labor it takes by about 42% was one particular organization. We looked at when they had a SOC, what does it take to do SOX? If you ever talked to an organization that had a SOX audit, everybody stops. The entire database department stops doing everything and they have to run a lot of manual processes. We've seen we can do a 30% reduction with that by just being able to use the platform because all those processes are now captured within the Moz automation platform. We also went back to our roots, okay? A big thing, if you ever talk to a CIO and I talk to them and ask them about software compliance, have they ever purchased or used more software than they purchased? According to Oracle, 60% of their customers, and they're the largest database supplier out there today, are out of compliance. They're using more software than they actually have purchased. And an average compliance solution, or usually a correction, is $2.9 million. Next slide. So when we look at this market, we are actually consolidating, three particular major issues. One is the software asset management component around Oracle and Microsoft, just in the database space. We are one of 10 partners with Oracle that have been given the verification certification. So we can go in and verify how many licenses are being used, report that back to the end client, or report that back to Oracle if the client chooses. And now they know, are they using what they actually purchased? That is a $5.5 billion market. Automation space is coming on very, very strong. We're seeing that's the largest growth area. And we're now using what we're taking all those different individual processes that Pam's got to do and putting them all in one single platform. So she doesn't have to go from one screen to the next to the next. SOX tools, it's becoming a bigger issue every day and growing on a regular basis. We see the market that we're going after being almost a $9.4 billion tool market right now. And we're trying to consolidate that and simplify it. Next slide. Here's our principles. We're trying to make the DBA's life better. All right, if we look at what they're doing right now, and I thought, as I was growing up, my brother-in-law was a DBA and had lots of little badges and little tools on his belt. And every Thanksgiving, he had to go off. He was very important. He got pulled away, or he couldn't make it to the baseball game. We're trying to make that person that's managing the data, let them get home at night, be able to handle those routine tasks much better. We're also taking right now, looking at automating 70% of the routine processes with the study we have today. We're looking at adding PyTorch with AI to actually take down to everything that you do down to 3 individual steps. We're also trying to make this a much lower cost solution. So if you look at all the tools that are out there, you got to buy each individual one. They're very large with their functionality, but you don't need everything. So we're trying to bring it. We're also trying to make it much lower, much easier to consume. When you bring these things in, ours is an agentless tool technology, so we can actually deliver this through AWS and run it through a SaaS model. If we capture just half of the total addressable market in the next 5 years is one of our goals, that's a $50 million business that we've got. We've already got letters of intent from the CTO of the DoD. We've been to the Pentagon. They like this. They have a $500 million contract with Oracle for all that, that they'd like to have us help them out with. We're also looking to go in HIPAA. HIPAA is another big area. Healthcare is a large project, a large area that we're looking at. And we're looking at doing a Series A round within the next 3 years. Next slide. This is where we are right today. So over the next 18 months, we're looking to acquire 50 new customers. And with the partner model that we're having, that's a $4.5 million business. 23, we're looking at it going to 75 with the ARR. We're looking at a $9.5 million business as far as revenue thing. Our current traction, we have total 10 customers on this today. And I've actually spent from my previous business about $6 million in actually building the platform so we can actually handle these transactions. Currently today, we've had release 4 or 5, which has all the functionality that we discussed in the platform. We have inbound marketing, outbound marketing going on. So we're doing the SEO, understanding who our personas are, who we're tracking. We're actually have fractional VP. We have sales teams in place today. As I mentioned earlier, and I also mentioned our relationship with Oracle, where we see our focus today, a lot of B2B sales, working with our partners. We're now in the AWS marketplace. We'll be there by the end of the year. And then we also have referrals coming from Oracle, because if they try to go in, if you look at their end of the year reports, they actually have a section of how much money they make out of compliance. And it's a pretty big number that Oracle makes. And Microsoft has the same challenges with their databases as well. Next slide. It's me. I built a company up to $30 million, already done it once. I've been in the IT industry for the 30 years. Gene keeps on top of the numbers, and then Bill is literally an expert with PyTorch. He's the platform builder. This is his This is his baby. He knows exactly how the technology is, but he's been working with me for 8 years. I won't say how many years of experience we have because I don't want to offend Jean because she might be listening. So next slide. This is what we're looking for right now, $3 million investment, for 15% of the company, convertible notes. We look at we can give you a return of 3.5 to 5 back. Here's where we're going to spend the money on. We believe that we've got a development team that's pretty solid. So we want to add more things around HIPAA. We want to add more things around possibly moving into Azure. And then the rest of it is going to be sales and marketing. We're ready to get to market. The product is ready to hit the market. That's what I have. Thank you very much. Did I do good, Tina?
Very good. Wonderful. So maybe I'll start off with the question then, since I'm already speaking.
Sure.
Can you tell me about the revenue in the past year? It's the product just launched this year, so that I think you're projecting 4.5 million revenue this year. So how far along are you in meeting that?
We've got 10 customers on different parts of the product itself. So the product is 4.5, has the entire platform, which we are now have the automation. We have the certification from Oracle, which we just acquired to that. And then that has just been released here at the end of June. So we've got a total of 10 customers on different parts of the older one, but they haven't converted up to 4.5 as of yet. But our pipeline is growing pretty aggressively.
And this platform, when you have each customer try, is that a lot of work to customize to their system, or is this something that just drop in, plug and play, ready to go?
Actually, it takes us less than a half a day to put the product in. We can connect to the servers and they can start you running the product as it sits today. All the processes that are there, routine backup, everything you need to do for Oracle, do for Microsoft, they're already pre-built. So literally we can connect that into your servers. Takes you about 2 hours most times, and you can be utilizing the product by the end of the day. When it comes to the compliance, same thing. Literally, it's a half a day, and we can run that compliance report and let you know if you're in or out of compliance within a day.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Aston. Yeah, I think you have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I was curious, what is the typical size of your client? And then also understand it's a SaaS business model, but how are you charging clients currently?
We're charging for a 2-year subscription to the client, for each client. So you get the compliance, because that's the kind of more painful point. And then with that, we have 2 what we call administrative users for that, and that's $139 for 2 years. And that's the price point we started off with. Now we have a scaled up based on number of servers, based on the number of additional users you're going to have, and that's the model we're using right now. And then whatever cost that they have by running it on AWS is going to be their cost, as they move forward, whatever the monthly charges, because the customer could use the platform very heavily, and they could have a very high AWS bill with us, and so we don't want to be responsible for that. And then as far as this type of customers, we were trying to stay away from the very large companies. We're trying to stay more in your enterprise space, say less than your under your outside the Fortune 400 or so, and staying in more that the smaller kind of more fragmented organizations. That's kind of an ideal place for us. Like AT&T, we think would be a big company, but they're ideal because they're very fragmented. And we found the same thing with healthcare. They're usually very fragmented. So we get started with a particular area, start there, and then we work out from there.
Go ahead, Saul.
Doug, I think just a follow-up question, sorry. Is the pricing different for different customers, or is it like a standard contract you have for a certain size of customers?
Standard. It's standard customer. It's by server and by user.
Okay.
And this is Saul. Just one sort of technical question, I guess. You said agentless, and that always catches my ear and my interest, because there sometimes the security problems go with those designs. With a SaaS and an agentless architecture, who's in charge of the credentials and the secrecy and the protection of those sensitive connections in your architecture?
the customer is going to be responsible for that. We use AWS primarily because they can take care of about 80% of the connections for us. And then anything additional to that, we've met any kind of the NASA standards that the government requires as of today. And then beyond that, that's, we've never had any challenges with our customers when it comes to the connections and the security issues, because that's already pre-built in there.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on.
One
to
of the other
next one.
values that we have with the, one of the other values that we do have with the platform is, we do track the actual users itself, so that way we can control who actually is touching what data within the organization. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the questions and also for the answers. Be sure to continue the conversation on offline. Up next is Omnitech Partners. Pitching is Tom Spinelli.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Spinelli. I am the administrative partner at Omnitech Partners. Although we're in the open topic portion of the showcase, our technology is related to power and energy. We are a technology development company. We've been developing mostly military technology for over 20 years, and we've successfully developed some of military products for tier 1 and 2 defense contractors. And those products were initially based on SBR development contracts. However, we also commercialize some of our technology, our military technology, and this electronic battery conditioning technology is one of those. Next slide. I think you could skip this one also. So I've reproduced some headlines, recent headlines from various automobile manufacturers, all pledging to transition to 100% battery power within a short term, 5 to 10 years. And not only these automobile companies, but I guess companies that are peripheral to automobile companies like Uber and FedEx and other similar companies. Next slide. So there's no doubt that automotive industry and other industries are heading towards being completely electrified or taking advantage of powering their devices, products with batteries. Siemens has also developed a train that's completely electric, and the list goes on and on. Power tools, lawnmowers, tractors, snow blowers, drones are in the news a lot by being used for deliveries by Amazon. They're all electric powered. Next slide. So what all these have in common are batteries, the need for batteries, the need for inexpensive, long-lasting, efficient batteries. Most people are familiar with the high cost and short life expectancy of these type of batteries. The battery of choice right now is lithium ion. It's gotten some bad press recently because of the environmental impact it has on mining the lithium. But other batteries, or the similar batteries, are being presently developed, but they all suffer from the same disadvantages. Most people, however, do not understand or realize that they have another common disadvantage, and that's they do not charge, or they charge inefficiently at cold temperatures. And when you try to charge them at the cold temperatures, it actually damages the battery, making them less efficient and reducing their life expectancy. Next slide, please. So yeah, the graph on the right illustrates just how significant this problem is, and it's for nickel, cadmium, and lead acid batteries, but lithium ion and all other batteries, similar batteries, suffer from the same disadvantage. So you can see at a relatively high temperature, like 25 degrees C, which is about 77 degrees Fahrenheit, that batteries already start losing some of their cranking power, the power that's available. And going down to about 0 degrees, which is room temp, which is freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, they've already lost 40% of their cranking power. And as I mentioned before, when you try to charge batteries at very low temperatures, they are damaged, and that damage is irreversible. What some car companies do now to try to combat this problem is they use heating blankets and insulation on the batteries, which heats them inefficiently from the outside, the core still remains cold even though the heat. And so those type of solutions are generally expensive and they're fairly inefficient. Next slide, please. So our core technology is, and I'll simplify this for everyone. We input the battery before charging. Prior to charging the battery, we input the battery with a specific type of current that is that effectively shortens the internal capacitance of the battery and results in heating the battery, the core of the battery from the inside. And it can be done very efficiently. It can be done quickly, and it does not result in any damage to the battery. Next slide. Yes, thank you. We have
30-second warning.
We have a lot of technology covering our battery conditioning. We have several patents already issued and several others pending in the US and in foreign jurisdictions. Next, please. We have integrated this technology in several ways into a charger as an adapter between the charger and the product, but our preference is to integrate it directly into the product, such as in the case of a vehicle in their battery management system. Next, please. So as I said, this technology is completely safe. It works on all types of batteries, including lead acid, lithium ion, other types of rechargeable batteries. It brings the battery temperature to its optimal temperature before charging, so that when the battery is ready to be charged, it charges efficiently and without damage. It increases the amount of electrical energy to the battery, which results in an increase in range of the battery and also increasing the life of the battery. And as I mentioned with regard to that graph, it's not just for very low temperatures. It's maybe more useful at low temperatures, but it's useful at temperatures as high as 70 degrees, because there is some slight damage and there is some slight loss of power even at 70 degrees. Next slide, please. So we are not looking for capital. We are looking for licensing opportunities. So mainly looking for contacts with the manufacturers of the products. We are not looking to with contacts for battery companies or charger companies. We want to integrate our technology directly into the product. So we're looking for licensing opportunities and contacts with manufacturers.
Excellent. Okay, I think we'll hold it here and we'll talk about the team at another time. Any questions for Tom?
What do you see as what do you see as the highest value targets for integrating products?
I'm sorry, Justin, can you repeat that?
What are the highest value targets for you as far as integration with what types of products? Where do you see yourself fitting in?
Oh, no doubt, automobile.
Okay, is there a second place in there?
I think heavy industries. We have an opportunity right now with a manufacturer of heavy industry equipment, and that's used in cold environments like freezers,
cold storage,
right? And we're pretty far along with them, but I think a lot of outdoor equipment and heavy equipment could be a next big opportunity.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Thank you.
How do you deal with hysteresis with your technology?
Oh, Jay, are you available?
Battery hysteresis. It happens with every type of battery at one form or another.
Right. I can't answer that question for you. My staff scientist is supposed to be on with me and I don't see him on. But I can get back to you on that, John.
Yeah, thanks. I dealt in cellular batteries for a long time that tend to develop it because you're recharging over and over and over. And at a certain point, you build up that chemical hysteresis.
Right. Is that a problem with lithium ion batteries?
Less so. Less so. But it can exist theoretically with every kind of battery. With your metal hydrides and your cobalts and things, it's very much a problem. And
yeah, this is Jay Rastigar. I was going to, for some reason, I wasn't
on the connection. Hysteresis is what we are using to heat the battery.
Good. Okay. Got it.
Okay, so that is a process of heating.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So you're monitoring voltage and amperage and over time.
Right. In other words, we are applying very, very high frequency,
Mhm.
and with very high frequency, the ions inside the electrolyte is going to move back and forth, effectively vibrates, and that's the source of hysteresis, and which increases the temperature. It generates heat.
Got it. Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next company, but just the OmniTech team, you guys have some questions in the chat, so just make sure to log on there and connect to the people who are asking.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Next up, last pitching company for the open topic. We're joined by World Housing Solution. Ron Benzev is founder and CEO, and he's going to be giving over and explaining the company to us.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present this. We launched in 2011, and we had to solve a problem relating to how do we house people quickly in a simple fashion in a refugee environment. That was our original focus. And from there, we had to pivot, and I'll get into that in a moment. But fundamentally, think of us as Lego construction simplicity, but extremely high insulation and thermal transference resistance. So we have a very, very efficient structure as we go along, and it's something that can be taken apart and rebuilt. Next slide, please. Our traction has been fairly good over the last 10 years or so. We're in a 17,000 square foot facility. We've deployed with every branch of the military, with the exception of the Coast Guard, and we've deployed structures, shelters, and other solutions from the South Pacific, the US, the Caribbean, the African continent, all the way through Asia and all over the European continent as well. Some of the key things are that we are the only shelter to have won the Base of the Future Challenge under AFWERX for the US Air Force. We've been ranked in the top 500 a couple times by Inc. 500. We're FEMA approved, and we've been reviewed and approved also by the Army Corps of Engineers. Next slide, please. So the problem relates to how do we solve today most quick to deploy systems when it comes to responding to either a refugee issue, a disaster issue, or even going ahead and building a base in a foreign environment. The challenge is that today most of those things rely on a 3,000-year-old technology, which is a stick and a cloth, a tent. So when you think about those current solutions, which have a place in the ecosystem, it really, however, is not conducive to being able to be efficient in those environments. Next slide, please. And this is a perfect example of a refugee camp. And I think that most of you around the Zoom call would agree that this is not a good place to be in. And however, this is the plight of most refugees today on how to resolve and deal with, finding a place to live that's safe and secure. Next slide, please. The reality is that when people think about tents and how they deploy, the military is actually dealing with the same issue, the same challenge. It is not simple, it is not inexpensive, it doesn't last a long time. And most military forces today air condition or heat the tents. So you can right away imagine the challenge of the infrastructure and the supply chain friction that it comes, not only with the cost part of it, but obviously also with the risk involved with this. 58% of all casualties in the Iraq and Afghanistan war actually came from the logistical side. So people driving trucks and delivering supplies were the most at risk. Next slide, please. Our solution, our minimum viable product, which is actually has been deployed all over the place, is based on a composite construction. Everything is designed to be carried by 2 or 4 people, men or women, extremely strong and lightweight, can be taken apart and rebuilt multiple times. Because of the installation capability, it actually allows us to run this with hybrid power. So this is where it starts working with great integration and a variety of different solutions that are being batted around this conversation. Hurricane resistant, and obviously one of the biggest challenges is also mold, mildew, rot, and termites, which is both a health challenge as well as a longevity of the product. The product can also be integrated with a variety of additional technologies, ballistic resistance, EMI or EMP shielding capabilities, while still maintaining the ability to deploy this in a modular fashion. Next slide, please. Capabilities are truly endless. We've been able and fortunate to present and pitch to a lot of different stakeholders from the Pentagon, including the F-35 aviation program for the Marine Corps, which is looking at us into acquiring multiple shelters. Already bought 2 specialized shelters in support of the F-35 and turning that into an additional acquisition. Other Marine Corps forces as well, looking right now at acquiring some of our shelters with the shielding, so that way they have a tactical skiff in a foreign environment. But obviously it's a box, so the box can be done and applied to a variety of different things, everything from affordable housing to medical to full-on camp deployed in the middle of nowhere, with the benefit that it can be taken apart and rebuilt if needed to. So it can be done in 2 ways. A, it can be done in a way that you can take it apart and rebuild it, or B, if you need it to keep it there forever, then you build it in that manner. Next slide, please.
30-second warning.
Next slide. We incorporate and integrate everything from water to, from sewer to water filtration to hybrid capabilities. Next slide. This is a competitive analysis. It's fairly long, but it goes through our abilities to, and how we compete against other capabilities. Next slide. The team is fairly deep and has a lot of knowledge relating to both the contractual ability, how do we sell to the military, how do we manufacture it, and how do we deploy it. Next slide. We're very fortunate that on our board of advisors, we have recently retired, which is an important thing, 2 stars, 1 stars, and high-level officers that have been very, very instrumental in helping us to deliver our solutions all the way through. Next slide. Right now, we're focused on the U.S. military and the U.S. medical market relating to healthcare deserts. The market is huge, and I'm not going to tell you I'm going to gain 1% of it and whatever. Phase 2, we're looking at how do we take the technology that we've deployed and designed and patented, by the way, into the next level, which is commercializing it with everything from school portables to affordable housing to portable morgues and everything in between. So we're looking at a $5 million investment in tranches, and it can be done as a safe, it can be done as a convertible, and there's a couple different ways that we're willing to look at it. But that's really the story in a nutshell, and I'm welcoming any and all questions.
I mean, it'd be nice just to see like a full deck with the offering terms for that ask.
I'm happy to send you more information offline.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Ron, can you tell us about the business part? What has been the past year revenue and what kind of gross margin do you see?
So last year has been a dip thanks to our friend COVID. A lot of what has happened with the U.S. military has forced a pause. So between COVID and between the change in the change of the guards in Washington D.C., we have seen a major pump of the brakes when it comes to the actual acquisition phase. We finished the year north of $1 million in sales. The year before was actually a little bit higher, so we've actually dipped. This year, we're seeing us going a little bit further up within that. The Marine Corps Aviation, we're supposed to acquire between $5 and $10 million worth of shelters. But the joys of dealing with the government is that it slid to 2022. So fiscal 2022, so it starts October 1. So we don't know if they're going to trigger some of it now, if they have any money left over, or if that's going to slide into the next year. And so our projections and our capabilities, we're now involved. Because, by the way, one of the things I need to mention is that even though we're a rigid structure, the U.S. military looks at us as equipment, which means that it facilitates the acquisition of what we do and speeds the process. So they don't buy us as a building, they buy us as equipment. And then for all the other players that are around this pitch, this is a perfect conduit to integrate with a shelter or with a box. We make a box and then be able to push that solution into the hands of customers and stakeholders within the DoD.
Question for you. As a business model, have you considered not selling the stuff, but using it as more of a lease or a rental, or a box as a service, or building as a service?
Yes, we have. The unfortunate challenge with that is that it's a very capital intensive on the front end. So until we're able to build some inventory to be able to then go that route, it would have to be done. And the challenge is you will not find a leasing company or a finance company that will actually lease to the DoD if it goes abroad. So if it's local, if it's CONUS, continental United States, yes. OCONUS, it's a no-go. But we're definitely looking at this also from a healthcare standpoint and creating so FEMA just approached us and wanted to buy 6 of our wheeled medical units, but they wanted them in 72 hours. So I told them, this is not Amazon. My name is not Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, we need to make them for you. They're not sitting in our lot. But if they had been sitting in our lot over a 90-day period of leasing, they actually would have paid for the entire cost of those units, which then could have been put back into circulation and sold or leased. So yes, we definitely want to get into that business, but it requires capital. And Tina, I think I didn't answer your question. Our margins vary depending on which contract vehicle goes through and how we're getting paid. So if it goes through a prime, a portion of our margins actually end up in the pocket of the prime because the prime is in the middle. If it's a direct contract, a non-compete, which we've done as well, obviously our margins are higher, and we've seen anywhere between 25 to 60% margin depending on the product that we sell.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ron. And thank you for all our pitching companies. Just a quick recap as we are about to move on to our next session and some thank yous. First to our panelists, Edison Partners, from Edison Partners, we had Aston Pierce. Thank you so much for joining. From Cisco, Judith Goyal. From Now Vertical Group Incorporated, Dave Wickmeyer. From First Midwest Group, Justin Weber. From Thales Cloud Security, Saul Cates. From GC International Corporation, Tina Tasakawa. From Sky River Ventures, Hyuk-Jin Soo. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I don't think Dr. Steve Kaiser made it today, but thank you for the panelists for joining. I highly recommend, for when relevant, to follow up with the panelists and more importantly, to take their words and internalize them, because there are a lot of gems and useful information that was shared with us today. For the companies, so thank you very much for all the companies that pitched. We had just a quick recap. We had Omnitech Partners, BlockNet, Vendita, Cyber Infrastructure Technologies, and World Housing Solution. We're moving on to our second session. And panelists here, more than welcome to stay on camera and continue to ask questions. We're going to be joined by a brand new panel as well. Joined by, from Energy Foundry, Judy Lee. From Climate Impact Capital, Alexander Rosenfeld. From Liberty, Dr. Andrea Rutola. From Full Cycle Climate Partners, Kyle Adkins. From Nesta, Manish Miglani. From Technic FMC, Dr. Deanna Grauer. From Army Futures Command, Destry Grogan. From Shimizu Corporation, Chuntaro Kano. From Anzu Partners, Josh Styling. And from Stanford University, Lincoln Blevins. Companies pitching under our renewable and alternative energy session are 4 companies: Sesame Solar, New AGE or New Age, A New Energy, and Aqua Metals. Without further ado, let's get started. First up is New Age.
Sorry about that, guys. Give me 1 second. Let me pull the slide deck up real quick.
So you could screen share, right? I think we just let you.
There we are. Is that right? You good, or what do we got? I'm not sure exactly what you're seeing right now. What about that?
So far blank.
Yeah. Told you. Went from an Android to an iPhone. Here we go.
Mike, I could still share your
Go
presentation
ahead.
that I have.
Just let's go ahead and do that.
Perfect.
And I'll just watch it with you guys. There you go. So new alternative green energy. You go ahead and go to the next slide. I think you probably want to go 2 slides. We're all about creating a clean future. We've purchased a patent to create hydrogen from coal a couple of years ago. It's called coal electrolysis. And so we started to take the bench model and build it into the scalable model that we have now. And the process is pretty simple. It is to actually clean the coal so that it burns hotter and cleaner. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The problem is bless you, whoever that is, the problem is that coal has had a legacy where it's polluted. There's a lot of carbon that is burned. It goes into the atmosphere. I think everybody is familiar with the Paris Accords. The post-combustion fly ash that comes out the other end is toxic in it, with mercury, sulfur, arsenic in it. It's contaminating our water table. Go ahead and go to the next slide. New Age, our solution was to build a cell that would actually process using coal electrolysis to make the coal burn cleaner and hotter. This process actually allows it to burn about 85% cleaner and 35% hotter, which is considerably better than what the Paris Accords have asked. At the same time, it creates a tremendous amount of hydrogen. When we first started to produce this product, we first started working on this process. The idea was to make the coal burn hotter and cleaner, and then start to remediate the fly ash. The DoD asked us a couple of years ago to see if we could actually harvest rare earth elements from the coal. You can, but the post-combustion fly ash is about 100 times more rich with rare earth elements than anything that occurs naturally anywhere in the world. So we took about a TRL5 that we had with the first cell, and we moved backwards to actually start to see if we could harvest the rare earth elements from it. Quite frankly, the hydrogen is where we focused our attention, is the sequestering and the distribution of hydrogens, because these cells produce so much hydrogen in this process. The rare earth elements, absolutely, you can harvest those rare earth elements, but the return on your investment is not nearly what it could be, what it is with the hydrogen. The other part of that is that there's a huge shortage of fly ash that can be used in the cement industry to make concrete. They approached us last year, first part of this year, to see if we could actually reconstitute the fly ash so that they could actually use it in the cement process. That also creates a tremendous amount of hydrogen. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The processes and the hydrogen market is coming online in a big way. Airbus committed to 2030, I think, all of their airplanes running on hydrogen. Toyota's pretty much committed to hydrogen fuel cells in their vehicles. And there's a lot of other traffic around semis and whatnot. All of the electric motors that are at the wheelbases, then you have the hydrogen fuel cells. There is also technology that we partnered with Bodic. Bodic Labs actually has the hydrogen combustion components. We've actually got 2 Priuses that run on hydrogen. It literally, in their their fuel injection. The fuel injection system has been modified to actually run on hydrogen today, not tomorrow. It burns cleaner and hotter. And so we've really been focused on this hydrogen market. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The competition, when we were looking at, there's coal gasification, so that they're running coal and they're trying to they do convert that, and they're able to capture syngas and create what some of them are referring to as clean coal. Our clean coal product is been trademarked as Hydrocarbon Plus, and it is for a power plant. Where you see me in my background, I typically don't change my background. I'm actually in an Airbnb here in Central Texas. And our first plant is to be built right down the road. This is it's the newest, most sophisticated coal-fired plant in the country, if not the world. And being able to clean their coal and clean the fly ash that's in Texas. Texas is the second largest polluter of fly ash in the country, second only to Illinois. There's a tremendous amount of fly ash there that is contaminating the water tables. Being able to take that fly ash and then removing the arsenic, the mercury, the sulfur, and all those things from it, that is part of that coal electrolytic process. By recharging that fly ash and sending it to the cement industry, basically all of those things are encapsulated into the concrete once it's dry. So the EPA is good with that. I'm good with it. It actually gives us a better product than what we have out here that are contaminating the aquifers that we're sitting on top of. It's the same problem worldwide, right? The post-combustion fly ash is a water problem. Coal is a tremendous resource if it's used properly. Our objective, going to the competitors that we had there, quite frankly, Shara and some of these guys, we considered them as competition, but really they're partners in this thing, because most of those guys are moving fly ash from one unlined facility to a lined facility. And so if we capture that in the middle and we actually partner with them, we can create hydrogen and we can remove and remediate a lot of those things in the process. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm not even going to go into the market potential. I know because we only got a few minutes, but the market potential is huge with hydrogen across the place. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The business model is pretty simple. I mean, we're right now we have we've basically self-funded everything up to a certain point. I think last year we started a friends and family round. We started selling shares at like 50 cents a share with a safe agreement that had a debt instrument attached to it. And we're about to finalize that literally in the next couple of days. We do have a term sheet in-house that to build this first plant. It's 100% funded at about $500 million to build that plant. And it's fairly sophisticated. However, there's still tremendous.
Sorry, Mike, 30
Really?
seconds, okay?
Yeah, Lord, that was fast. Go to the next one. Anyway, look, we've got a phenomenal team behind us. We built a really phenomenal C-suite. We're strong in ESG. We are looking for private investment capital. There's a lot of different opportunities that are involved in this thing. That's why I was saying it's a 5-minute pitch is really hard. But I am open for questions.
All right, fantastic. Whoever has questions, feel free to ask.
Yes, a quick question here, Andrea Rotello. So what is the positive early traction that the company has achieved so far?
Well, the original processes that you had with with gasification and then with coal electrolysis, we've reached out and had some really positive feedback, and working with people in the South African Union. We've had some really positive feedback from the folks at the DOE. We've had very positive feedback from the National North American Coal and a lot of different coal associations to keep this thing moving so that we can keep those people employed. We've had more, I think, interest in Central Texas and the Navajo Nation because there are huge environmental problems that we're addressing while we're creating jobs and kind of turning up, making people live a cleaner, better life.
Do you have historical data? I mean, how long is the historical data on the metrics on the operations of your system?
Everything right now has been based on coal electrolysis. There's history on coal electrolysis from Germany during World War II, where they were actually producing these things. In the 70s and 80s, Coffin and Farouk were actually pushing along the coal electrolysis piece until about 2018, when the nanotechnologies or the nano alloys came available. And that's why we partnered with Vodik, so they can actually do a nano platinum alloy. Now it makes this process actually commercially viable. So we've just now started making hydrogen bubbles with the scaled model at Vodik. And we are going ahead and moving forward with the plant that we have here. You start out with the gasification piece, and then we're inserting our module into the middle of it. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Hi, I guess I'll speak. This is Alex Rosenfeld, also here in Texas, so maybe I'll get to visit your plant, Mike. So send me a note. We kind of have a slightly kind of different view on the future of coal, but I really like the idea of dealing with the fly ash. How does your business model work if all of these coal plants get shut down and all you're dealing with is the fly ash pits?
Quite frankly, from our business model, I mean, when we go onto a coal fire plant, if we make their coal burn, if it's burning 85% cleaner and 35% hotter, there's no reason to shut them down, right? Because they're significantly better off than what the Paris Accord has asked for. However, if I build a plant on your coal fire facility, I end up giving you about 10% of my revenue, right, as a royalty coming off of the hydrogen sales. However, if I build it upstream, if I'm doing it at whether I go to a fly ash repository or I go upstream, I have to take coal to mix it. I have to process the coal with the fly ash in order to harvest those things that we're pulling out of it, and it's making hydrogen in the process. So if they close down all the coal fire plants, my contention would be that we will replace the coal fire furnace with the hydrogen combustion generators that are already on the market, and actually we'll be sending the hydrogen to that plant and use that as a combustible material. That'll be the energy vector instead of coal. And you get more than one pass on the coal actually to make hydrogen. You can actually run it back 3 or 4 times. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd be interested more in that reuse model. And let's talk separately about what's happening beyond the Paris Accords and the net zero goals, which are going to would ultimately shut down a lot of the coal if most countries follow them. But interested to see what you can do on the remediation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Quick question, just to follow up on the hydrogen side. The thing that I missed, and maybe it was in there, I missed it, is it's great to use the coal. It's great to maintain employment for a portion of that workforce. But how competitive is this source of hydrogen going to be with other sources of hydrogen? It's great to be able to make it, but it's got to be competitive.
Very competitive. Coal electrolysis actually is about 1/3 of the energy necessary compared to gasification or any other processes that are making hydrogen. Even water electrolysis, you still have to use electricity that's coming from somewhere. You're still having to use gas if you use natural gas. When you look at what we're doing, because of the process, the coal electrolysis process, it is again about 1/3 of the energy required to create the same amount of energy. The same amount of hydrogen.
It seems to me that your competition is not so much other coal-related industries as much as the hydrogen, the emerging global hydrogen industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think as long as we stay focused on the remediation aspect of this, like what Alexander was talking about, the cement industry, because a lot of the cement industry, whether people know it or not, they actually burn coal to process and make cement. And so for every ton of cement that you see coming out of there, they emit a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere. If I reduce that by 80%, that's significant. And regardless of what we do in the United States, quite frankly, if China's going to build 1,100 coal-fired plants in the next 2 or 3 years, a good example is if 80% of the coal coming from Australia goes to China, if I were to process all of the coal in Australia before it gets shipped, I'm reducing their shipping by 25%. And then we affect the global footprint for carbon in a significant way, just in a couple of years. So, it's a very, very, very significant proposition, regardless of what we do with the coal power plants in the United States. I know that the cement plants, it also gives us a distribution point for the hydrogen. And that's our next phase, quite frankly, is to actually use those cement plants. It's a modular construction so that you're using it at the cement plants. And there's about 400 places around major metropolitan areas. So we can actually distribute hydrogen pretty readily just in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years.
How much more time do we have for questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Judy. It's fine.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Judy with Energy Foundry. Thanks
Hey.
for your presentation. My question is, it wasn't clear to me what the breakthrough or unique aspect of your technology is compared with other technologies that are trying to clean coal. And then related to that is, if we're looking at a global perspective, coal from different places is slightly different. And so how flexible is your technology to support different chemistries in coal?
It's pretty funny, actually, when I say funny, the PRB is probably the dirtiest coal that we have in the country, and it produces more hydrogen. And quite frankly, there are more rare earth elements available in that particular post-combustion product. Same thing is going to happen everywhere. I mean, coal is what it is, right? It's plant-based carbon. And so as you run the carbon through, you're taking away all of the affinity for the platinum electrode when it goes through there, when it separates the coal particulate from everything else. All of those other things stay in solution, and then sequestering those things and then distributing them and monetizing those elements is actually not that difficult. You ask about what made it different was the electrodes using a nanoalloy structure as opposed to using membranes and things that they had tried to do in the past. It didn't work. It wasn't commercially viable because you'd end up, I think our first model required that we would take 20% of the Earth's platinum supply, right, just to do our first plant. By the time we went through this thing and did the nanoalloys, it was definitely commercially viable, not to mention that the electrodes and whatnot lasted like 10 times as long. So yeah, there's been a lot of, just in the last, since 2018, there's been a tremendous move in-house, working with Bodic, because that's what they do. Vicon is a nano alloy, it's a nano steel technology. And then mixing the platinum salts in there just allowed us to do some things that we haven't been able to do before.
Thanks.
That work? Thanks. I appreciate you guys. It's it's exciting. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening. I'm more excited about what we're able to do for people. The technology is pretty much proven itself at this point. Now it's just a matter of deploying it is really what it amounts to. So if anybody's interested, we're certainly available to talk.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Up next is Aqua Metals, and pitching will be Steve Cotton, President and CEO.
Great. Thanks, everybody. What I'm here to talk about is Aqua Metals, which has developed a hydrometallurgical technique to recover rare earth metals as well as lead, which we've started with. And with the next slide, you'll see our safe harbor, because we are a public company, which we just, I think, skipped over real quick. So that's for you to read at a later time. We're NASDAQ listed, AQMS on NASDAQ. Okay, next slide. So what the existing industry of battery recycling is based upon lead batteries primarily, and we'll talk about lithium in a little bit as an up and coming industry, obviously. But smelting is the #1 pollutive thing that mankind does on the entire planet. So it ranks quite high in terms of the emissions and let alone worker safety and things. And so what you see pictured to the left there is what a furnace looks like that operates at about 3,000 degrees that you need to operate in order to extract the lead metal and really generate a new battery. So I'll show you on the next slide what Aqua Metals has invented, which is totally different. And this is it live in action, aqua refining. What you're seeing is one atom at a time, an electrolyzation process through a room temperature and biodegradable organic acid that allows us to electrolyze and first digest and then electrolyze and create ultra pure metal one atom at a time. Very different than smelting. Very safe, very low emissions, and really a game-changing step function change in recycling technology. Next slide. This is the product that we produced when we were de-risking and demonstrating the technology in Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, really effectively down the street from the world famous Tesla Gigafactory. But what we made there were 35,000 ingots. Those ingots are about 63 pounds a piece, or about 55 truckloads of lead. And we shipped those to Clarios, which is formerly Johnson Controls Power Systems Division, and is the world's largest battery manufacturer and an investor in Aqua Metals. We generated those ingots through our process and technologies in 2018 and 2019. Next slide. So AquaRefining does create a high quality, ultra pure product, and it refines it right on the machines. And it really does have a potential to impact the battery world with longer lasting, better performing batteries at a potentially equal or lower cost to recycle. As we continue to evolve the product, we're driving that product introduction cost curve to the point where it's becoming quite competitive with the incumbent methods, and we believe it can become a no-brainer and the best available technology on a global basis. So this will also enable recyclers to meet demand as the lead acid battery industry and the need to serve the capacitization grows, when it's very difficult to pull a permit to expand the traditional smelting types of operations. So let's go to the next slide. We are a equipment supply and licensing company. So a cornerstone of our efforts has been to achieve our global IP with 61 patents that have been issued pretty much everywhere that there's existing battery recycling, and 53 additional applications that are pending. So anything you see there that is dark blue or blue is approved, and light blue is pending. Next slide. So why does lead matter? Some people think lithium's the future, and lithium is a future, and it's a very important future, and we'll talk about that in a moment, and the applicability of AquaRefining to solving the puzzle of recycling lithium batteries. But lithium is going to complement the growth of energy storage with a lot of high growth applications that are out there in the marketplace. On the left, you can see we're putting a lot more cars on the road, and a lot of them still have internal combustion engines. And a lot of those cars that have internal combustion engines now have 2 lead acid batteries rather than one to start the car and one to do the start stop at stoplights and stop signs. Energy creation, green energy creation, the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. So there are massive battery energy storage farms being deployed. Some of those are lead, and some of those are and will continue to be lithium. The data center space is explosively growing, and they're very large Costco-sized buildings with the hyperscalers, as well as the banks and other institutions that are running the internet to serve the various applications. And those data centers are servers and batteries and generators. So the generators and the batteries keep the servers running when the power goes out. You need a lot of batteries, drives demand for lead acid batteries, as well as lithium batteries. The lead acid battery industry is growing at a cumulative annual growth rate as a mature $65 billion industry today at about 3 to 4%, with about a $20 billion recycling element that is growing in terms of the total addressable market. The last point is that electric vehicles replace the internal combustion engine, but they don't really replace the lead acid battery. The lithium battery propels the drivetrain, replaces the engine and many of the moving parts, but you still need a lead acid battery to manage the rest of the vehicle, such as the turn signals, the computer, the battery management system that manages the lithium battery system, et cetera. So EV growth does drive demand for lead. Next slide.
30-second warning.
Great. Yeah. So this is our impact slide. We're the first of our kind and only alternative to the incumbent recycling methodologies. We've invested over $200 million as a public company and private company, obviously before that, into where we are today. And we're addressing the market through licensing and equipment supply now that we've de-risked and proven the technology. We've announced a letter of intent with Acme Metals in Taiwan to develop new techniques for manufacturing batteries in the future. And we're developing safe and clean recycling methods for lithium batteries. Next slide. We're working very diligently on preventing the lithium-ion battery industry from being the other most pollutive thing we do on Earth. There are players that think that recycling lithium-ion batteries is doable through smelting. We think not. We're building on our proven IP. We filed provisional patent, and we've established an eco-network of partners to tackle clean lithium battery recycling. What was our 150,000 square foot Aqua refinery in Tahoe Reno Industrial Center is now being repurposed in a company that we've invested in called LiNiCo, Lithium Nickel Cobalt, that'll become operational very soon. And we'll be adopting our Aqua refining technologies to go after the multi-metal environment associated with lithium recycling. Next slide is a timeline. We were in revenue when we de-risked the technology. We signed the letter of intent with our first licensee. There's more to come, and we get back into revenue with equipment supply and licensing fees. I think the next slide.
We're gonna be headed to
Yeah, you can read the press release, and then the next two slides you can see in our website, which is basically our management team and board. You can find that on our website. Last point is things that we're working on: grants, government-backed loans, looking for additional eco-network members, access to feedstock to recycle, offtake of buyers of high purity metals from our licensees. Open up for questions and answers.
Quick, maybe two related questions for me. I'm looking at the size of those machines and wondering about scalability, but then also wondering about maybe the other side of that, which is deployability. Is this something that you would anticipate being deployed on a distributed basis, or do you see this being, or are there, for example, infrastructure limitations or environmental limitations that mean that this has to be only in certain places?
So our work towards upgrading the existing industry that has a lot of depreciated and amortized smelters, there's about 300 throughout the world. We do that in the form of what's called an Aqua Fit. And that is that we connect into those existing smelters. We take the difficult components to process and divert that through the Aqua refining technology, and it's modular. So what you're seeing behind me is what one aqualyzer looks like, and that's not quite to scale, but it's pretty close. They're not very large, and each one of those produces quite a bit of lead per day, and you can add aqualyzers. So as you do an Aqua Fit and retrofit an existing facility, you phase in the aqualyzers as appropriate, and you convert the way that much of the battery recycling is done through this process, which gives you vastly reduced emissions, better relationships with the environmental regulators that have been trying to shut down smelters, the ability to capacitize and feed the growth in the industry, and continue to have a license to operate, and then also develop better performing, longer lasting batteries because they don't have a lot of the impurities. Because it's made one atom at a time. So things like bismuth and copper and silver aren't in the material.
Could you talk a little bit more about the timeline to get from lead to lithium?
Yeah, so we're pretty deep into the applicability of Aqua refining for lithium. We filed patents. There's a plant in Tahoe Reno Industrial Center that is now to be owned by LiNiCo. The lithium nickel cobalt is their namesake, and that plant is going to be generating black mass by early 22, so in a matter of months. And we, in the meantime, have developed pilot lab scale versions of aqualyzers that go after specific metals such as cobalt, nickel, and manganese, and other metals that you recover from the lithium recycling process with, again, clean hydrometallurgical processes as opposed to sticking them in the furnaces and making a big mess. And the timeline for our development and getting that in the first stages of operation will happen in early half of 2022, I would say. So we're ahead of a lot of the other players that are talking a lot about clean ways to recycle lithium, because there's land, there's a building, there's a plant, there's technology, and there's an eco network of companies. One of the other companies that's involved is Comstock, which you might have heard of. Comstock Mining is transitioning to the valorization of metals, and they're a throughput company that is one of the major investors into Galenico as well. So we believe that not one company can solve the tremendous challenge of the energy transition, electrification. Is going to take a group of companies, which is why we formed an eco network. And what we're looking for and engaged in discussions with are partners that are feedstock, producers, such as automobile manufacturers, consumer electronics manufacturers, data center operators, wind solar farm operators, et cetera, that need to find where to put these lithium batteries when they're done, so they don't go in the landfill, which is where 95% of them go now. They go into the landfill. The lead industry is 99% recycled. Lithium is not recycled very much to this point in time. So let's build a clean way to do it, as opposed to replicate smelting across a brand new industry that's trying to be the green leaf.
Hey, Steve, this is Josh here from Anzu Partners. I was wondering if there's some cost benefits to this process over smelting, or is this mainly for, environmental impact and the purity of the end product?
So right now, we're at cost parity with what we call our 1.25 version of our product, which we ran 1.0 in 2018 and 2019 when we demonstrated the technology at a commercial level and sold those 35,000 ingots to the world's largest battery manufacturer, Clarios. With our continued improvements, we believe that we will drive the cost to the point where it becomes, as I said during the presentation, more of a no-brainer. And the analogy I would give is solar. Solar used to be more expensive per kilowatt hour of production, and now it's the cheapest arguable form of energy creation. And so our intent is to continue to evolve AquaRefining to be the cheapest way to recycle the key metals that are associated with batteries.
Awesome. We have to move on. You have two questions waiting for you. I think both Judy and Justin have questions for you, so be sure to check with them offline or through the chat.
Sure.
Also, you have a statement here from Dana Jensen from the United States Air Force in the question and answer. Have you approached the Export-Import Bank of the United States for the financing of hardware you are exporting? I can introduce you, say. So be sure to follow up with Dana also through the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. That was Steve Cotton from Aqua Metals. Moving on to the next company. We're joined by Sesame Solar, and pitching will be Lauren Flanagan, who is the executive chairwoman.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm glad to be here. Can everybody see everything?
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm the co-founder of Sesame Solar. We make mobile solar nanogrids with solutions inside for a variety of vertical markets. Next slide. And our whole mission is to make solar deployments quick and easy. We try to get them able to be set up by one person in less than 15 minutes with a minimum of training to help solve the ubiquity barrier of solar. Next slide. So a little bit about the company. We're about 4 years old. We're a majority woman-owned small business. We have a variety of solutions ranging from TRL 3 to 7, but most are in the 5 or 6. And we have a Lego block type model, so there are many configurations and solution partners that we can deploy. So everything from disaster preparation, rapid response, mobile medical clinics, command centers, offices. We can do mobile laboratories, laundries. We can pretty much put anything inside. We have an experienced leadership team who've worked together before and brought this where we are today. Scalable supply chain partners and multiple solutions partners. We've got significant traction. We have right now about $3 million in orders in hand, and that's just July. So we think we're going to have a great year. And we have deployed widely to commercial customers, most significantly in the telco and broadband space, and then in some Caribbean applications, and we're just beginning our DoD opportunities. Next slide. So what you're looking at now is a Sesame Solar nanogrid in operation. The walls open up, that's the name Open Sesame, and the solution is inside. In this case, this is a mobile crisis response office. This particular solar nanogrid has 10 kilowatts of solar generation and 68 kilowatts of lithium-ion battery storage. It has a diesel generator backup, but we increasingly are going to be moving to hydrogen fuel cell. And in fact, we also can help with the creation of hydrogen through electrolysis powered by solar. And so we can create a closed loop for complete fuel independence of self-generated hydrogen, hydrogen backup, and the solar. And we can do mobile wind turbines as well, any kind of cogeneration. Next slide. So our sweet spot in the market is $3 billion, the under 100 kilowatt hours, though we can do more when we cluster them. And again, it's all about shipping it ready to use, ready to deploy. Next slide. We have a patent pending. Next slide. We really are focused on mobile solar power. And as I said, our secret sauce is ready to use. Here you're looking at our kind of dual axle trailer platform, which could be towed behind a standard truck. Next slide. Or as we've seen, ISO shipping container can go on a flatbed. And we have gotten product market fit with our disaster prep and rapid response solutions. Next slide. You can cluster these and we could actually create a mini grid to respond to emergencies. Next slide. And this particular one is one we have for Cox, which is a towable communications and command center. They've got multiple ones of those. Next slide. Any kind of office, create inside, medical office, command center. It's all flexible, different components to make different office solutions. We use standard components. Next slide. We can do water filtration, water generation, and have done that in the Caribbean. Next slide. We have a refrigeration partner for full scale refrigeration, commercial walk-in for food security. Next slide. And we have all kinds of medical clinics and medical applications from mobile to semi-permanent. Next slide. And we can do all kinds of EV charging, EV top up, where not only can we provide the external power, but we can also house the smaller components. Interesting for a lot of the micro mobility products. And we're talking with some of those partners. Next slide. So really our value proposition is to make solar deployments quick and easy. It's all about one person can set it up in a matter of minutes with very little training, very little maintenance required. These are durable, tested for extreme weather, though we're looking with DoD to further ruggedize to meet the needs of DoD applications. They're flexible for a variety of applications, and most importantly, they're mobile, so they can be put on the back of towed by a truck or on a train, ship, cargo plane, or helicopter. And the ROI is, solar power is increasingly at least equal to the cost of diesel and total cost of ownership, but of course has all the benefits over time and lives saved of not transporting diesel. So next slide.
Okay, Lynn, 30-second warning.
I'm done. Thank you. I'm trying to turn my alarm off here. So there we go. It's not working. Anyway, thank you, and ready to answer your questions. We make solar simple and easy.
Thank you, Lauren. This is amazing. I loved it. I was just wondering who's your market? Basically, who are you talking to sell this? Is it cities? Is it not-for-profits? Have you talked to utilities, especially in California?
Yeah, so we sell really through three kind of channels. One is global resellers. We have Intersys, which is one of the largest battery companies, power companies in the world, is selling through to the telcos. We've sold through to 4 of theirs so far: Cox, Charter, Mediacom, and Comcast. We are selling through NGOs. We worked with Direct Relief, and we've worked with them in the Caribbean. We are selling direct to government, DoD. So those are kind of our different channels. We actually have just sold a number to the telcos in California who are responding to PSPS power shortages and need to have backup power, and we're providing that. We just have, about 42 of them that are under construction right now. So that's definitely our markets. And so we sell through those partners, and we are principally the innovator, designer, coming up with the technology. And then we have solutions partners who, it's a two-way solution. So for example, our refrigeration partner is trying to resell us in Africa for electrification of small villages to secure the food chain. And we have other kinds of partners like that resell our solution where we're the power envelope.
Excellent, thank you. There's a lot of people that I know will be interested in these solutions, so I will reach out.
Lauren at sesame.solar, love to talk with you.
Yes.
This is Diana Grauer with Technip. Can you tell me a little bit more about how many units you've got, where they are they deployed? What's the maintenance cycle? Are you doing that? Is somebody else doing that? Can you talk a little bit more to that?
Sure. So we've got a couple of units that were early prototypes from before this company was officially formed that are at a mining company in Brazil, and they're still working great 6 years later, and they do their own maintenance. Through our resellers like Intersys, they do the maintenance and first line support. We've got a couple of units in the island of Dominica working fine over the last couple of years. Cox and Comcast each have a couple of units. They're working great. Intersys is their support. We just have these 42 we're building now. We're the second line of support. That's the advantage of the reseller channel. We support them as they support their customer, but this is deliberately high tech, low tech. We use a lot of standard components that are easy to replace. The genius, if you will, is in how to combine that to make it easy to use, rapid to deploy with no additional construction.
So that maybe to follow up on that, I guess I love the packaging, and I can see, especially coming from California, a whole lot of really interesting emergency response applications. But it seems, I guess that one question is, other than the great packaging and the integration, is there a secret sauce here that differentiates and creates barriers to entry? And then the other question really comes down to price. Can folks, whether they're private or public or what have you, afford to keep this capacity on hand pending the earthquake or the wildfire or what have you?
Sure, great questions. So we do have utility patent pending on a very broad patent covering the notion of, this completely self-contained package whose walls open up to have a solution and all the components in there. We're adding to that. We have a number of new designs. I can't talk about those, but we will continue to build out our IP. We have manufacturing art. What we do is actually quite difficult, and trade secrets. That's a very important part of the IP. And then the innovation, coming up with these kind of Lego block solutions in a scalable way. We spent our first couple of years thinking, how do you productize this? Because we didn't want to be in the business of making custom units. We wanted to be able to make stuff out of standard components. What was the second part of your question? Was price. Yeah,
Price,
so
yep.
price, the go big model is raise a very large pool of capital, stand side by side capital that will finance a rental pay go models. And there's, predicates for that. For example, Scale Microgrids, which is natural gas and solar. They build very big ground mounted systems. They've got a 300 million line from Warburg Pincus. There's a lot of attractive capital for that because you've got solar tax credits, rapid depreciation, revenue share, and ultimately resale. And so you can have a pretty nice return on that pool of capital fairly securely. So that's the go big plan. We've got to test out that model, and we've got to be able to find out, is FEMA really willing to sign 5-year agreements for, in advance of hurricane or wildfire time to have a number of units ready to be deployed in advance need. We do have that go big plan, but right now we have a nice gross margin. We are cash positive because we collect all the money before we ship and we sell it out. So we haven't had to raise much capital. We've been able to move forward on about $1 million of capital. So we've been extremely capital efficient. And we'll be profitable this year.
Okay. I was listening to your presentation and coming from a utility background, especially a California utility background, I'm wondering whether this is part of a utility of the future energy, or more technically capacity as a service sort of a model.
Absolutely. That's what I call PAYGO. Energy as a service is another way to do it. But if we're doing water, it could be per liter of water, or if it's we're doing EV charging, it's per kilometer or per mile. If we're doing refrigeration, it's per half hour of service. So you can price those PAYGOs in the unit economics that make sense for their geographies. If you can cover the CapEx and you have that kind of PAYGO model, then that'll cover the operating expense. But absolutely for utility, they should be deploying these everywhere in California, all in the remote areas. And it's an energy as a service funded over time. We're trying to talk to the folks there, but it's challenging.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about that a utility rate base may be a very efficient way to build capacity that would be then available when it's needed.
I agree. It just is a lot of red tape when you're doing that. One of our great advantages is we ship it, boom, 15 minutes, you're up and running. No permits, no nothing. You're just ready to go. And that's part of the off-grid benefit. As soon as you go in with utilities, you have all these policies and regulations, and you slow the whole process down. But to go big, I agree, that's a key component.
Thank you very much. Great questions. Also, Lauren, you have a bunch of questions in the Q&A and also in the chat. Next up, and thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Next up is Anu Energy, and pitching will be Joel Gregor, who's a board member in charge of special projects.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Hello to everyone viewing and to the panelists. Thank you to Deep Tech for having us. So yeah, as you just heard, I'm Joel, pitching on behalf of, pitching for Anu Energy. And in the Q&A, I'll have Chris, my colleague, who will be supporting as well. So get straight into it. Anu Energy. We're a Delaware C corporation that's a single point product solution, predominantly within the renewable energy sector. We aim to be a transparent company that are looking at a new way of thinking with open source ideas and outputting these solutions with high efficiency to global communities, with the aim to resolve many issues that we as humanity face, like sustaining our home, essentially. Next slide, please. So with hundreds of years of combined experience in various fields, from military support and engineering, sales, marketing, a broad range, with a collaboration of those that are from veteran military to interns, we have a combined collaboration with 2 years of life of the company so far, headed by our CEO, Pat Canaro, an engineer with a strong focus on humanitarian development. And this team is a growing team with the same mentality and focus where we form what you see today. Next slide, please. So obviously we're all here having this discussion about renewable energy and the problems that we have. So we all know the issues and challenges that we're facing. To highlight a few, some of them being the climate crisis that we're facing. For example, the flooding that's happening in Bangladesh as we speak, and trying to change for all those to other aspects where we have fuel shortages. For example, in Lebanon, where they're having that issue of what they're going to do when they run out of fuel right now. And then there's other aspects where they're not really talked about, but there are big issues that we do need to look at, which we're damaging wildlife or the nature around us and elements of that respect. So with regards to that as well, we're also looking at the utility sector. That's another problem. There's a few pain points in there as well. It's all a hot topic, if you pardon the pun. And much like Siemens' philosophy and approach, we at Anu plan to challenge all of these issues head on and resolve these pain points for a smoother transition into a new future of energy tech, which allows a global accessibility and infrastructure for all. Next slide, please. So just to highlight some of the things that we do and to kind of touch on a parable or a quote that we all knew in the past and I feel needs to come back, is we give a person a fish, we feed them for a day. And that's the products that we are offering on the market at the moment. And we've actually pioneered a suite of high outputting off the grid microscale system solutions and products that won't damage or require major modifications to to either nature, wildlife, or the current human infrastructure and development, while enhancing and supporting grid networks and community-led energy infrastructure plans. So just to highlight some of the that we do have, obviously here you can see the wind turbine. And one additional thing to note that isn't on there is that it can be taken apart down, we can pull the wings out, and it can actually withstand hurricanes as well. So there's a lot of features that we can go into, obviously, and more. Next slide, please. Another option is the hydrogen generator, obviously, sorry, the hydro generator, not hydrogen. And the key factor here is it plugs straight into any of our pipe work, and it's a great response because obviously rainfall on every rooftop falls into every gutter, straight into power. Next slide, please. And then we have our solar tracker, which we're working very hard on to improvise as a dual panel facing aspect, so we can get more out of it with the reflective surface underneath, and just trying to sector in the market to make it so it's portable as well. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we do have more products under our belt, from water generation, we're looking at on-demand hydrogen as well, and obviously energy storage and how it all collaborates, because one of the key areas, as I said, is connecting into the utilities market, for example. So on solar farms, how we can integrate into that and enhance that sector. Right. Next slide, please. So the next section of the parable, obviously, is to teach them to fish and feed them for life. And that's where another niche element of our company comes in, which is our eConnect application. So with this accompanying mobile application, we aim to educate customers and workers of all backgrounds, especially those transitioning from former areas such as oil refinery and coal, to understand the products and any other aspects so that they can help to integrate these systems, essentially building what we like to call a new workforce. You're going to hear a new a lot. It's a beautiful tagline. And then next slide, please. And then another element that we like to add on is give them the tools and the means to share this skill, and they can feed their community forever. And that's where we kind of bring everything in. So we encompass it all with a quality controlled factory, which we will plan to replicate globally within interested countries, to carry out their own progression of our catalog of products, accompanied by a transparent, open source company approach to allow us all to share in a new way of thinking, allowing us to energize our future together. Next slide, please.
I think we're at time, Joel. So we'll just queue it up for it. You want to just a last 10-second, leave us with your last message.
Yeah, no problem. So if I take us on to our journey, at the moment, we have a cash infusion of 12.5 million, which is a convertible note, which we do plan to obviously to pay back at the end of the line. And we're currently using that to help build what we'd like to, a wind turbine to help, well, a wind tunnel to allow us to do some rigorous testing on various elements of our product to start get quality assurance for a 50-year life cycle on our products. And we're also injecting that into some intensive marketing. The area that we're looking at now is the next stage, which is building the first factory that we want to work from and building sample products to start doing light production and having a look in different sectors. For example, conservation sites, and seeing how we integrate very well, and then portraying those case studies. Next slide, please. Now, what we're actually asking for, don't worry, we're not asking for one person to give us 38 million. We're asking for a combined sum of 38 million of essentially convertible notes. And more so alongside that is we're actually looking for key networks and partnerships, because as we said, it's about collaboration. We're all in this to figure it out. So we want to be an open company that introduces new ideas and implements them as best we can.
Thank you very much.
Last slide. Yeah, sorry, just the last slide. So thank you all for your time. And this is just to showcase some of the companies that we're actually connected with at the moment. Gleeds, which is looking at helping us with the factory. P4P Energy, which are actually looking at solar over cover. Gyrene, looking at the water generation and various elements. Yeah, open to questions.
I have a quick question. This is Diana Grauer with Technip FMC. You've raised 12.5 million and you're going to spend it on marketing and a wind tunnel.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't clear. It's not just a wind tunnel. We're looking at integrating it into tooling as well and building up elements so we can start building the product and do some vigorous testing, not just on the wind turbine, but the other products as well.
But the other products. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any last questions for Joel before we move on to the last pitching company of the session?
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your financials right now? You said that you've raised 12.5, but what is the operating model for the company? And tell us a little bit more about your financials.
Yeah, if I can call on, I think Chris should be on the call.
I can go ahead and go into that. So we are currently in pre-seed, and that 12.5 million just came in, and like we said before, that's going into more rigorous testing. And as far as like the offering goes, so the 38 million is a max on the pre-seed investment. So we're looking to get up to that, and that just kind of brings up that testing. It brings up tooling. It brings up like who we're going to hire, and then it also brings up the marketing budget. So that's the max for phase 1, and then that'll end in 2022. And then when we get into that, we're in talks with the government right now to raise 250 million to build our first our own factory and stop outsourcing the building of our products.
Awesome. Does that answer your question all right, Diana?
Yes, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joel, and also Chris. We actually, my mistake, but we're actually finishing this session. We're moving on to our next one. So quickly, it's just some quick thank yous for everybody who joined, both the companies and the panelists. So from this was our renewable and alternative energy session. Just to recap, we had from Energy Foundry, Julie Lee, from Climate Impact Capital, Alexander Rosenfeld, from Liberty, Dr. Andrea Rutola, from Full Cycle Climate Partners, Kyle Atkins, from Nesta, Manish Miglani, from Technip FMC, Dr. Diana Grauer, from Army Futures Command, Destry Grogan, from Shimizu Corporation, Shuntaro Kano, Josh Styling from Anzu Partners, and Lincoln Blevians from Stanford University Sustainability and Energy Management. We heard from some great companies, including Sesame Solar, New Age, A New Energy, and Aqua Metals. So thank you everybody who pitched. Thank you for everybody who participated. Panelists, feel free to stay on and join us for the next session. Coming up next, we are moving straight on to power management and supporting systems. So staying on is Julie Lee from Energy Foundry. And we're joined also by Bill Anderson, Dr. Bill Anderson from NAVFAC, Dave Whitmire from Now Vertical Group, from Lockheed Martin, Ryan Hatcher, from Microsoft, Anna Ruff, from Delmar Aerospace Corporation, Stanley Springer, from Technip FMC, Dr. Diana Grauer is continuing with us, as is Destry Grogan from Army Futures Command, Shuntaro Kano from Shimizu Corporation, and Josh Styling from Anzu Partners. Pitching today, we have actually 5 companies. There are 4 on the slide, but we have a great last minute addition. We have Therm Exit, we have SensorLink, we have Viam, and we have ABM Nano. And last but not least is Excelix Inc., who's going to be pitching final in the session. So without further ado, let's get started. And thank you for everybody for joining. First up is Steve Patton pitching from Viam. Steve Patton is Vice President in charge of strategic initiatives.
Steve, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Perfect.
There. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Steve Patton from VIA Science. We are a company that's based in the US, Canada, and Switzerland. And today I'd like to tell you about how we are working on unlocking data in order to tame grid complexity. I'll be joined with my CEO, Colin Gounden, who will be available to answer questions afterwards. A quick 30-second pitch is VIA's technology is a transformational shift in the way data is stored, secured, and shared. So we upend the current system with, we say, stop decrypting your data and sending it around. Instead, keep it encrypted and at rest. And for the rest of the presentation, we'll tell you how we do that. So next slide, please. The grid is getting very complex. So I list here 6 conditions that are coming. I'm seeing a lag. There we go. So these are things in the last 5 or 10 years that are new and are only going to exacerbate the complexity of the grid. Intermittent renewable power, dispatchable energy storage, two-way power flows, flexible demand, transportation electrification, carbon accounting. Next slide, please. And when you add all these conditions to an already complex grid, it gets very tough. So imagine matching intermittent supply with flexible demand. You can see that it's a complex problem to solve and optimize just for the energy flow, like the electrons alone. So, but imagine the layer on top of that, which is the information flow that has to happen. So we work on that layer because that information flow that has to happen in order for the energy flow to happen are things like who's generating right now, who's willing to curtail, who is bidding in and ready to charge their EV fleet or things like that. So these are information or data problems. And as the grid gets more complex, we're going to need more and more of this to solve. However, a lot of this data is private or proprietary and will not want to be shared. So that's where we come in, because if it doesn't want to be shared, it's not going to flow, and then you have a problem with the power flowing. So next slide, please. This is where we transform the current data paradigm. And this is our 5-second pitch, which is we say send algorithms to the data, not data to algorithms. So it's what we mean by that is stop decrypting data and sending it off. Like that's the current paradigm. That's what everyone does. Hey, I need 5 years of your historical data to model. Okay, here, let me decrypt it and send you a CSV file. Our technology don't have to do that. Next, please. So we use privacy enhancing technologies, blockchain, homomorphic encryption to create a privacy layer around data so that it stays at rest and encrypted. That way, algorithms are then moved to encrypted data where they can do private computation on it. And then instead, answers are sent back. So in that sense, your grid now has algorithm flows and answer flows rather than data flows. So we really think it's a revolutionary way of doing it. We also think it empowers data owners, so it's good for them. It ensures customer privacy. It's good for them. And in the energy space, we think, and we're hearing that regulators will really like this as well. So with all this, we think we can tame the grid complexity. Next, please. A little bit of history of us. We do have some of the largest power providers in the world on us. We also have some work with governments and energy regulators, and we are leaders in data privacy and cybersecurity. We were recently awarded one of the highest cybersecurity accreditations with the U.S. Department of Defense. We're Platform 1. And next, I'm going to go into the ask. So there are many energy problems that our solution will solve, but I'm going to focus on 2 today. Next. Back one, please. So first, we're looking for energy asset owners, so wind farms, solar farms, electric substation, utility scale storage, to join our virtual consortia in order to build better models, save operating costs, and improve efficiency. So next, please. I'll explain what virtual consortia is. So the idea here is that you need a lot of data to train AI models. There we go. Again, let's not send all this data around, decrypt it and send it. Let's virtually pool it. So that's what our technology allows it. So on the left-hand side, you need a huge amount of data to properly train an accurate model. And you see on the right, a typical utility or a generating company doesn't have nearly that amount of data, but together they can pool. Again, they keep their data and it stays there and people can't see it, but models are allowed to run anonymously on it and get the top operating models out of it. So next, please.
Hey, Steve, just a heads up, 30-second warning.
Okay. Okay, next, one more slide. This is our second ask. So we're looking for energy providers, aggregators, meter manufacturers, anyone eager to collaborate, people that have data and people that want data. So this could be, anything. We believe, everything's going to be metered in the future. So that data implies privacy and it's going to be constrained. So anyone on either end of that. So, on the smart meter side, HEMS providers, VPP providers, even AI shops that are looking to build models. They're going to need data, and our system's a way to get it. And of course, EV charging networks, EV charging OEMs, demand response companies, and the like. So next, please. Yeah, so please join us. We're looking for people in the energy space to join us for either the consortium or for the at-the-meter solutions. And I'll take questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions?
I think there are 2 questions in the chat.
Looking for them.
The first question is, Steve, what is the benefit for energy providers to collaborate? I think you hit on that with your virtual consortia, but do you want to reiterate?
Right. So if you're an asset operator, like a generation operator, you can pool more data. So you have a much larger data set with which to build and train models and find best practices, and especially for wind and solar, which are relatively new. So something like a coal plant, we know best practices to run that because they've been running for 150 years. But for a lot of these wind farms are 3 to 5 years old. So for the utility, it's that's the benefit for them to collaborate.
Go ahead, Dr. Grauer.
What's your sort of defensive wall? How do you keep people from replicating what you do? You obviously have to collaborate with an operator in order to build this operating model. What keeps somebody else from doing what you're doing?
Steve, would you like me to take that?
Yeah, please.
Great. So first, that's a great question. On the models themselves, actually, we feel like that's totally fine for it's hard for us to actually be the experts in all things and all people. And if people want to own those models, and there should be competition. So actually, we're okay that other people have models that they bring in terms of analytics and analysis. I think where we're special is around the ability to allow those models to be built either by us or by a third party, and keeping the data private and secure. The wall, there is. We have issued patents. We have 3 issued patents and 12 patents that are pending. We also, as Steve referenced, just this week we announced the highest level of cybersecurity clearance for our software, which is available not just to DoD customers but to others. So that's above it's above classified level. It's top secret level. We think cybersecurity is everybody's, is something for everybody, but it's to maintain that cybersecurity clearance is hard, and so we think that's the it's another aspect and hard to replicate.
Colin, maybe you want to speak real quickly about what it means to be at that, how often your team gets tested on their cyber penetrability.
Yeah, it's a continuous testing process. So I think a few weeks ago when we spoke, we presented at another Deep Tech showcase. I think it was every 12 hours that we had to test it. Actually, it's now 4 hours. So the standard has gone up. So every 4 and it'll probably continue to move. Literally every 4 hours we have our software tested, and then we have 12 hours to respond if there's an issue.
Well, amazing. Mike, you have a quick question?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Steve, I was just curious. We have we're in the middle of working on a process right now to harvest rare earth elements from post-combustion fly ash, and the idea is, and we're working on some code right now to quantify those rare earth elements as they become available, as the electrolysis process happens, and then those particulates become available, is to actually quantify and monetize those things in real time. And obviously you'd have to use some sort of a blockchain technology, and the encryption that you guys are dealing with is exactly what I think what we're looking for. Are you doing private partnerships in some regard, or?
Yep. Sure. Yeah, Mike, I did see your presentation. I loved it. So we should connect. Colin, go ahead.
No, exactly. That's exactly right. Happy to do that.
And I see a question on multi-party computation. And how is this different from multi-party computation? Multi-party computation is one of the privacy enhancing technologies that we use, along with homomorphic encryption, differential privacy. So, we're a shop that is an expert in all those things. And so how's it different? I would say we use it. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much from the guys from VIA, Steve and Colin. Moving on to our next slide, or next company, Sensorleak Corporation. Is Gary here?
I'm here. Can you hear
Floor
me
is
okay?
yours.
All right. Hi, everybody, and thanks for this opportunity. It's been great so far, just listening to everybody else. Gary Hilkema, I represent Sensorleak here. We've been in business since 1985. Next slide, please. What we are going after is the demands on utilities. We want to help them deal with the pressures from consumers like you and I and the government to support green energy initiatives. And we want to give them the chance to address these issues. These demands give us an opportunity to provide precise grid edge data collection. Next slide, please. It's a worldwide issue, guys. There's demand for reliable energy in certain parts of the world, and in others there are the need to meet government initiatives that are going on. Next slide, please. Our vision, which is based on the changes occurring in the world, is to aid the electric utilities in protecting their revenue, and adapting to new market demands, costing them billions of dollars over the next decade or two for the changes they have to make. Next slide, please. We know a lot about the demands in electric utility because we have been selling into the utilities since 1987, and our core technology is a patented Rogowski coil developed for measuring current in high voltage environments. Next slide, please. We have worldwide distribution right now. So this map represents all the areas and countries we've sold products into. And we have an established rep and distributor network as well. Next slide, please. That network has allowed us to sell our core product, shown here, which is an AmStick, into 83 different countries. Next slide, please. We've also had sensor developments with other partners that have played a key role in our growth over the years. And these are a list of some of the companies that we've been able to work with. Next slide, please. What's the opportunity? Our opportunity is to monitor distribution transformers, and our approach is with a low profile sensor that we're naming the TMS-XT. It's going to provide data at the source to make key planning decisions for overload prevention, theft detection, and power quality. Next slide, please. The TMS-XT is capable of taking accurate measurements, giving the utility the data to plan for changing load profiles on the grid. And the need is for them to get it right, especially since they're going to be spending billions of dollars over the next decades to meet these demands. So it's not so much about how much they are going to need to spend, but it's going to be more about where to spend it. And we need to give them a chance to protect their revenue from theft, which in some countries can be upwards to 30% of the power generated, and it's just billions of dollars being lost as well. So, and then on top of that, they have technical losses that we also can help them with. Next slide, please. Based on our research, expertise, experience, we have designed this sensor to be a live line installed in less than 5 minutes. It weighs less than 1.5 pounds, and it's difficult to visually detect from a distance. Next slide, please. Cellular communication is going to be the targeted method for transmitting data to a remote server, with options of simple software for retrieval of the data, or will allow for integration into other enterprise solutions. Next slide. It is estimated today that there are over 2 million distribution transformers installed worldwide. Next slide, please. Which we've estimated or set as our potential market 180 million, which is 0.1% of the 2 million installed. Next slide, please. There is some competition. Grid 2020 has a product, as well as there's a product called AGI LV Node, and these two types of systems are installed on existing transformers, but with highly visible boxes. And for the AGI node, it takes some time to install it and putting it on the pole. The smart transformers and smart meters require significant investment in replacing a lot of existing equipment, amongst some other issues. So what makes us better? And what makes us better is, next slide, please, our ability to be extremely accurate with a discrete sensor. Our combined cost of installation and per unit cost is much less than our competition, and our sensor is capable of partner integration. Next slide, please. What are we asking for? We're asking for 1.5 million. We have final development into certain areas, as we can be seen here. There's tooling and manufacturing that need to occur, and then going to market worldwide. Next slide, please. Our core team that has been doing this for some time, Darren has a team of mechanical and electrical engineers. Chad has a team of assemblers, manufacturing, and Tanea and Nate manage our sales system throughout the world. Everything we design, we also manufacture here in Ferndale, Washington. Next slide. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions.
Go ahead, Stan.
How did you come about the 0.1% target market of all the transformers? Is that based on industry practice? What is that based on?
It's based on the transformers in certain areas that are literally going to be needing some sort of monitoring. So for instance, high use areas where there's going to be outfitting different transformers, or the need to have more load on transformers. We realize a lot of transformers are installed in areas where their use is not have such a high demand on them, or due to the changes. So it's based on clusters and areas where there is a higher demand for some of the changes that are going to be occurring.
Okay, and since it's a heuristic, I guess, is it conservative, and is there an upside?
It's a very conservative, and there is an upside. There's an upside to 2%.
Thank you.
This is Diana Grauer from Technip FMC. Do you need one unit per transformer, or if you need one per line, how is that set up in working order?
Correct. Yeah, it is one per transformer.
Hey, Gary, Josh here from Anzu Partners. Cellular transmission usually takes a lot of power. So my first question is this battery powered, or is this plugged into the grid? My second question is, what type of maintenance are these sensors going to require?
Right. So the unit is powered from the line itself, and it's a low power transmission. So we're not pulling very much from it. So yeah, it's powered up because it has the two connections. We have voltage there, so we have power. So it's fully powered. It does have a battery backup for last gas if the can or the transformer goes out, or if power goes out, that we're able to still trickle and continue to have the chip going still until power comes back. But it is self-powered. And as far as maintenance goes, once installed, these are intended to be and designed to be built for permanent install for 7-10 years. As far as maintenance goes, they are a minimal maintenance, very minimal, if any.
So you said that this is Diana again. What's the design life of the sensor?
The design life is 7 to 10 years.
Is 7 to 10 years. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Josh. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, Josh Gould here from Duquesne Light. How do you work with utilities to determine which to deploy in what distribution transformers?
Yeah, we're going to be relying on the utilities to be able to work understanding that. We also have a recorder product that does do recording on the high side, on the high voltage lines, that will be able to help them plan accordingly to bring these down to monitor directly to get more granular and more consistent data. So we do have some planning tools that allow them to pinpoint where they need to put these at.
And just one quick follow-up, have you used those planning tools when you've deployed with utilities in the past?
Yes, the recorders, one of the first slides, we've sold over 7,000 of those recorders throughout the world for that purpose of planning, load planning, selling to the engineering departments throughout the world.
All right, William, you want to ask the last question?
Yes. So I noticed, I believe on an early slide that you spoke to how this addresses and helps with reliability. My question is does this do anything to help with resilience? A significant amount of our effort focus is making sure our solutions do improve resilience of our power systems. So I'm curious if you have any ability to speak to that.
Again, the resiliency data, so outage management systems, is that, being able to know the temperature of the unit, to know the temperature of the transformer parts discharge, some of the transformer life and health from a resiliency standpoint. Is that what you're focused on?
No, I'm talking about like for what we saw in Texas with ERCOT. Does this help those extreme events?
Right. Yeah. So what it could help in things like that is when they're receiving data back to receive alerts on which transformers could be overloading or overheating, and they would have to still have other things in place because these are not connected to the transformer to have an action occur to that transformer.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary from SensorBlink, and thank you everybody for your questions. Up next is Julia Chen from ABM Nano. Hi, Julia.
Hi. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Great.
So,
Hey, Julia, you're going to be sharing your presentation, correct?
I thought I've already sent to you, but yeah, sure, we can do that.
Let's let you share, just because I think that will be easier.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull it. Does this look fine to you, or do I need to?
Yeah. Just put it in presentation mode and you're good.
Full screen? Okay. All right. So, hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Chen. I'm here presenting to you on behalf of ABM Nano. We're a manufacturing business as a startup company with our unique technology from Houston, Texas. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of our focus industry, the electric vehicle, more specifically the solid state battery. So based on the market analysis, the solid state battery market was valued at $62 million in 2020, last year. And in the next few years, it's going to grow dramatically. And by 2027, it's going to grow over to $480 million. And we all know that the solid state battery is the goal, but because it's safe and it's fast charging, it gives you the long life for the battery, which means it's going to be long mileage, and it has lightweighted. While the traditional lithium-ion battery contains flammable liquid electrolyte, which causes battery fire and even explosion, lots of safety issues, as we all know. But currently, solid-state batteries are still not reliable or scalable. So we need to replace the flammable liquid electrolytes by the solid electrolytes. The key problem is that the solid electrolytes are centered by ceramic powder. And centering the ceramic to a high-density electrolytes using a lower temperature and less time is a huge challenge right now. So the good news is that ABM Nano has the technology to solve the fundamental problem for the solid state battery. Here we offer the nano-sized lithium solid electrolyte. It's different from the liquid electrolyte. Our ABM solid state battery, we can offer the high efficient volume production because of the efficiency of this nanotechnology, and it gives you the high ionic conductivity, of course, the high density, and it's dendrite free, which offers you the safety. More importantly, I would say our technology is completely mechanical engineering, so it does not contain any chemical pollution, which exactly matching the requirement for the zero emission. So here's the picture I wanted to show you, the difference between other supplier in the market and compare it to what we can offer. On the left side, that is the current market supplier that they offer 5 to 7 micron size and some are larger particles that offers only low energy density. That's the particle size that they can offer. That's the best they can offer. On the right-hand side, with ABM's nanotechnology, which we patented recently, and it's a high energy density. That you can show the difference, you can see the difference. And it's like if you compare, you cut a tree and you have a wood log and wanted to put it in fire and burn it, and compared to the sawdust, you want to burn it in a few seconds, it's just burn out. So that's the huge difference that you can tell. And then it's going to save a lot of energy to burn it. And so sintering the process, it's the same thing. It's going to cost less time and less energy. So our particle size is 100 times smaller, and we have 50 times more faster processing compared to any other process. And it's going to be at least 20 more times of energy saving. Now, I wanted to show you the current player in the market for solid state battery research, and they're claiming that they're going to be the first one who offers the solid state battery for the market, electric vehicle. I don't really want to see them as a competition. Of course, right now we're still a startup company, but at the same time, we can drop in our technology, our products for them, sending them the solid electrolyte we're producing from ABM. And at the same time, if they are not interested, then we can continuously develop, including solid electrolyte and the electrodes, which means the anode and cathode as well. But we do have the advantage to manufacturing all those ceramic powder in a highly efficient way. So, and here's some endorsement. Dr. Steve Harris is on board with ABM Nano as our advisor. He commented as ABM is the only technology that he knows that can reduce the energy cost of solid electrolytes enough to make them commercially viable. And by the way, we're going to work closely. We plan to work closely with Berkeley Lab and in Penn State to continue this research after the promising feedback they've already sent to us. On the right side, that's Professor Jordy. They did some analysis and experiment with our powder, and his comment on the right side, it shows that this could be a major contribution if everything demonstrates as what expected. So in the middle side is the TM result. As you can see, it's 50 nanometer size and smaller. So here's some results and feedback. We have the promising result from Berkeley Lab that shows that ABM is the only supplier offer such small nano size. And by the way, the smallest particle size is 5 to 7 micron size, and they cannot even scale up. So it's not viable at all for commercialization. The second is from Penn State. We worked closely recently for the experiment for the censoring. Yes.
30-second warning.
Okay, thank you. And also from Chicago. So it's all very impressive, and they've got the best result they've ever seen. They wanted to continue working with us, and we're looking forward. Well, for ABM nanotechnology has a broad base. We can also making other powder, including the high entropy powder, thermoelectric powder, and high other magnetic materials, all kinds of nanomaterials with our patented nanotechnology. This team is over 15 years of experience manufacturing. We've had our business back in Canada, in Ottawa, and we sold our business in 2014 to a public traded company. It's definitely an advanced materials expert team. And we have already delivered tons of powder to 13 different countries back then. Well, here's what we're looking for. We're looking for $3 million for 10% equity. Within 18 to 24 months, we wanted to deliver the prototype with Berkeley Lab and Penn State. And the next step would be commercialization and the business growth. And we do have the plan by 2026. If everything goes well, we wanted to do IPO or acquisition exit if investors are interested as an option. So there it is. Thank you very much. We will not stop until we make it.
Excellent. Thank you, Julia. Any questions for Julia? Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I have a few actually. Do you have any outside validation of your solid electrolyte from other types of manufacturers like a Panasonic or a LG or BMW? That's number one. Number two is, what method do you use to actually make your nano powders?
Good question. Thank you, Joshua. So basically right now we have just started working with Berkeley Lab and Penn State. They've done some experiments, which, you know, they said it's very impressive, and they wanted to continue the research, and they believe we can create this very high density because of the nano size, which other people cannot make. And then it's 100 times smaller. For Panasonic and all other automakers, we actually have been working with GM in 2019. That's where we started. And for the nano size powder for the solid electrolytes. And that's also why we are more confident than ever about this material. And we haven't really get in touch with any other companies yet. The technology itself is called high energy planetary ball mill, which we have been developed on and off for in the past 20 years. So now that, you know, about 3 years ago, we decided, you know, it's ready for the market, and we started it, and we've sold some powder to different companies, not just for the battery, of course. And, you know, during the pandemic, we worked with GM, but now we start to, you know, working with Berkeley Lab and Penn State. We wanted to continue the research. That's what it is. Hope I answered.
And so your relationship with GM, like, are you still working with them, or where was it left off with them? Are you still working on like a joint engineering project with them, or?
We were hoping so. I guess they have a sense of about this material, and their feedback was that our material was the best, as what they have seen. But the thing is, somehow their project paused during the pandemic. And to be honest, I have no way to understand exactly what happened afterwards. I did send email, and I was told that that team transferred to a different section. I cannot answer after that on behalf of them. So, but it's and by the way, Steve Harris, he worked for GM for 18 years. So, and he's on board with me, and he understands exactly, you know, what's going on. He was communicating with them, I guess. You know, hopefully by the time we finish our solid electrolyte prototype, we would be able to go back and work with them again if they're interested.
Go ahead, Dr.
Thank
Grau.
Thank you.
Need to unmute. Hi, this is Diana. Can you tell me a little bit about your IP portfolio? Is it patents? How many? What does your application funnel look like for this particular process?
Thank you for the question. We've already applied patents for this particular material, which is LZO powder in nano size. We just patented really because we believe we're the only one who can make it, and we're way ahead of the game. Even if somebody knows that this is the material or what this is the size that fits for the high density requirement, I don't think anybody can develop it in the next few years. The next thing is for the technology. We're actually on pending for that patent, so I can get back to you with more information if you need it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Judy.
Hi, what's going to be your business model?
That's a good question. Remember, I was talking about the competition or the partnership. I was actually trying to reaching out to the QuantumScape or Solid Power, more of QuantumScape at the time. Solid Power is more recently. I wanted to really tell them that we have this technology. We can replace any other suppliers right now that they have. I believe that is one of the key issues why they cannot make it commercially viable. But I guess every technology, every company has their own confidential information they probably won't share. So if they are not open up with us, we're going to have to make it for ourselves. And so not only the solid electrolyte, we probably would have to make it into an actual solid state battery. But for the prototype, Berkeley Lab can make it into a solid state battery prototype, not just electrolytes. So it's going to tell you if it's going to work or not.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia, from ABM Nano. Next up is Thermexit.
Thank you.
Julia, make sure to stay in the chat for a few minutes. You have a few people who want to connect to you and have a few questions also.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
We're joined by Katie Wilgus, who's CEO of Thermexit.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, so thanks everybody. My name is Katie. I'm the CEO of Thermexit. You can go to the next slide, please. So as electronics become smaller and more powerful, the risks of failure due to overheating will continue to increase. And today, 55% of all electronic failures are caused by electronics overheating. What we make is a thermal interface material that enables a natural but powerful transfer of heat away from the heat source. This allows thermal engineers to reduce size, weight, and complexity and cost of cooling mechanisms in electronics. In addition to enabling new technologies that can meet higher power requirements for applications that absolutely require high reliability and high stability, the end result is longer lifetime and better performance. Next slide, please. So what we produce are thermal interface material gap filler pads. The way these work is they get sandwiched in between a heat generating component and a heat sink. What we have are two product lines, both with very high thermal conductivity, which is a measure of a material's ability to transfer heat, one of which is electrically insulating. So these are a non-silicone based, non-reactive, and no cure system. And our pads exceed competitor performance by 5 to 10 times in thermal conductivity. Next slide, please. So the key differentiator here is that these are not made with silicone. For high reliability applications, like anything, for example, in space, silicone is just not an option due to outgassing, which is really oil leaking from the pads that can short out critical components. A lot of times, the high thermal conductivity pads are based in silicone, so you have to sacrifice high thermal conductivity for reliability. Both of our product lines have passed NASA's outgassing requirements. Next slide, please. So both of our products were released this year. We've sampled out to about 75 customers. We're getting great feedback from them. We have a lot of applications where this could be a good fit, and it's a relatively easy design in most applications. But right now, our initial focus is in 3 specific areas. We're focusing on satellite payloads, also high power semiconductors, and embedded processors in aerospace and defense. Next on deck, we want to focus on 5G infrastructure and data centers. Next slide, thanks. So I want to talk a little bit about the thermal interface material total addressable market. So there's a super large market for thermal interface materials. It's about 3.4 billion by 2025. And that includes a wide array of thermal interface materials. So that's pads, pastes, greases. They come in a lot of forms. But pads themselves make up about 500 million of that 3.4 billion. With variants that we're working on in our product pipeline, we think a serviceable market could be around 40% or higher of this number of pads. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, we have now 2 products that we're sampling out, and we have a bunch in the pipeline based on customer and distributor feedback. The first one we're working on is increased tackiness on one side. It seems like kind of low-hanging fruit, but it's actually super important for high volume manufacturing, because you don't want the pad to be slipping around as you're manufacturing. We also are working on softer pad variants. We're going to do that in Q4. And then working up to a larger sheet size. We're currently sampling in 5 by 5 centimeter squares. We're going to get our way up to 25 by 25 centimeter squares, and also thinner pad variants. We're working on scaling up production in the next 12 months as well. We're going to do that in two ways, by working with contract manufacturers and also by investing in equipment to scale up in-house as well. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit more about the team and the company. So my name's Katie, and we are currently a part of Nanoramic Laboratories. We are spinning out Thermexit into its own entity. We were accepted as one of 10 companies in the Techstars Space Accelerator program. That program started in June. We're about halfway through now. And we're working on accelerating the growth of the product line while spinning out into our own company and also seeking investment. The company, Nanoramic Labs, was founded back in 2009 by two PhDs from MIT. The initial core technology was a high temperature ultracapacitor. So we've always been focused in super harsh environment energy storage. Back in 2016, we pivoted and rebranded as Nanoramic Labs. Now the main focus of the company is on electrode material for lithium-ion batteries. And for a while, Thermexit was a side project. Jun Lee was our first employee that we hired. He's a PhD and an industry expert in polymer materials. He's our CTO. And on the team, we also have John Grillo, our Director of Business Development. So now Thermexit, in addition to the executive team here, has 6 full-time employees and a very different strategic profile than the rest of the company. So we feel like it's the right time now to spin it out into its own company, put a full management team behind it, put some fundraising behind it, and really accelerate the growth of the product line. I think I have one more. So, I mean, this is just a contact slide. We are raising money. So if you want to talk more about that, please feel free to contact me. It's just katie@thermexit.com. And I guess it's a good time for questions.
Wonderful. We have a first question from Stan.
Hi, Stan.
Katie, thanks for your time. Nice briefing. Question for you, 2 questions. One, in the aerospace sector, granted the space environment is harsh, but the volume isn't high. But yet there are a lot of other applications that require, would seemingly benefit from your product, to include the unmanned world, where small environments, et cetera, require a lot of clever heat solutions. So why space? Why not something else with greater volume? And the second question, perhaps related, is are you still receiving government funding in any form of innovation research?
Thank you for those questions. Yep, I definitely agree that there are, wider applications for us to focus on. But the reason we want to focus on space is a couple of reasons. Number one is initially we want to get those, low volume, high margin markets to just get that beachhead. We also feel like once we can get qualified for space, there's a real high level of credibility there, because the standards for reliability in space are super high. So right now we're working with partner companies, Lockheed Martin, NASA JPL, and Israeli Aerospace Industries to get qualified for space. And we think that credibility is really going to carry us forward into some of those higher volume markets. Also, we're not ready to support the quantities needed by some of those higher volume applications just yet. So we're starting in the smaller markets, and we're going to expand as we grow. I think the second question was about government funding. So Thermexit doesn't currently have any government funds. Nanoramic was kicked off. They've had 2 really large grants from the DOE, a bunch of follow-on cash from NASA. They're also doing a program now with USABC. We have submitted for a few proposals for Thermexit, but we haven't heard back about those yet.
Good time.
Thanks, Dan.
Any additional questions for Katie?
I guess just a really quick one. How much capital are you planning to raise?
We're hoping to raise $5 million. We're a little bit further along than a true seed stage company at this point. We think 5 million will allow us to work on these current product variations, scale up manufacturing, grow up the team, and probably give us cash runway for about 18 months to 2 years.
And do you have an idea of how much more you'll need after that to be fully commercial?
I don't have a great idea of that right now. I would love to reconnect with you about that later as we kind of go through this process. But I will mention that, you know, we never really want to be producing really large quantities. We're working now with a large manufacturer in the market. Our model is really going to be one of licensing. So we just want to prove ourselves in medium quantity applications and production, and then ultimately license it to one of these really large players who will add this technology to their portfolio of thermal materials. So we're not looking to scale up to be a huge manufacturing, you know, company.
Hi, Katie. This is Diana Grauer from
Hi,
Technip
Diana.
FMC. Just a quick question. You're raising 5, gives you 18 months of runway. What team members are you missing right now that you need to hire and bring on board? You said you've got 6 full-time reports. What does the rest of the team look like?
Yeah, so there's 2 key hires that we need right now. One of them is a thermal applications engineer. What's been really interesting as we go through customer discovery is that, you know, we can compare side by side the specs of our products, but when it comes for actual use case, the engineers use them in such different ways. It becomes very difficult for us to do a comparison. So that's one thing that we need right away, is somebody who can kind of understand the customer needs and then start running those experiments and comparisons. We also need a director of process manufacturing. These are the 2 people that we need right now. As we're scaling up to the larger sheet sizes and moving, you know, our products from R&D to manufacturing, there's a lot of challenges that go with you know, producing, manufacturing, and having, you know, yields that are acceptable, and making sure we meet the spec every time and have a repeatable manufacturing process. So those are the critical hires now. I'll also say that, you know, we plan on having some kind of service agreement with the parent company to start for certain functions that we're, you know, using from them right now, that we will plan on scaling down over time. But initially, you know, we'll use the service agreement with them and start to hire on our own people, you know, for finance and HR and all those other functions that we'll be using the parent company with at first.
Go ahead, Ryan.
If we have time, so Ryan Hetram from Lockheed Martin.
Oh, hi.
Happy
They're a
to
partner in
hear.
the Techstars Space Accelerator.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So
Yeah.
happy to hear your interest in low volume, harsh environments, especially space. So one question I have is about the application space in particular. You mentioned that this material is roughly 5 to 10 times higher heat transfer connectivity than the competition.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times when I hear those kinds of improvements, it's often followed by an expansion of the application space. So obviously you're looking to, as a substitute and replace for existing products, but with this, you know, at 5 to 10 times higher heat conductivity, are there other applications that you think you could get into, other markets you could maybe address?
Other markets we can address other than aerospace and defense, or, you know,
Other
like space
markets than just a
applications?
straight
Oh,
other markets than just a simple substitute and replace of an existing, instead of just displacing existing products. Do you think you could expand the market for this type of material?
yeah, that's interesting. I've actually heard a lot of feedback as we, you know, have gone through a lot of mentor meetings, that if we could make this 3D printable, there would be huge markets for that. So that's something that would be great to add to the product pipeline. We also have been exploring thermoplastics as well, so using some of our proprietary methods in other ways. So yeah, I mean, the, you know, thermal pads is really just a start. There's a lot of technologies that are down the pipe in the pipeline that could use some of the basis of this to expand the market. Sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Katie from Thermexit.
Thanks.
Daughter company of Nanoramics about to spin off on their own. We're at our last pitch of the evening or the afternoon, depending on where you are in this world. Excelix presenting, I think we have Jason as well as Jason Schwartz, as well as Jerry Schwartz.
Excellent. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? And is my slide up?
Loud and clear, and you're ready to go.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. I'm Jerry Schwartz. I'm a CEO and one of the co-founders of Excelix. We are a Seattle-based corporation commercializing technology developed out of Washington State University and some work at Pacific Northwest National Labs. And slide advance, please. Thank you. We find ourselves at a really interesting time. Lithium-ion batteries have undergone some evolution over time, but currently are inadequate for most of the needs that we're trying to evolve our marketplace in. Barely functional for electric vehicles. Certainly having my Apple Watch die after 10 hours and my cell phone need a recharge at 2 o'clock in the afternoon are not adequate use models. So there's a lot of attention being put into ways to enhance lithium-ion battery production. The quest for more capable battery has really gone in the initial focus. We've heard earlier about Solid Power and QuantumScape and others that are approaching a solid state and lithium metal approach. I think the general assumption is those are a little farther out. The acknowledged next wave is the silicon anode supporting current lithium-ion battery architecture. So the first wave of lithium-ion batteries came out in 1991. It featured graphite as the primary anode material. There's been research and a lot of investment for the last 13 years since 2008 in evolving to a silicon anode, but most of those have been revolving around a process of using nano engineering because of the notion that silicon expands 3.5 times when fully lithiated, and that causes cracking. And there's a general assumption that under 125 nanometers, you don't get the cracking performance. So a whole host of developers have gone that direction. And of course, a tremendous amount of money has been raised in the process. Where we're very different is that we start, rather than nano engineering, building up with nano components from the ground up, we start with a large format silicon in the micron scale and do a etching process where we end up with a porous structure of silicon, pure silicon actually, 100% silicon, with a very thin carbon layer around it. This allows us to do a couple of things. First of all, our precursor materials are as much as 1% less than some vendors and up as high as 10%. So we start out with a very inexpensive metallurgical grade, 3N silicon melded with another metal to create a composite. That process is a two-step process, which is basically commodity materials utilizing a simple process that's very inexpensive. So it gives us a tremendous cost advantage while getting to a performance level that's equal or better to anything that others are doing where silicon is the engaging opportunity. The thing about silicon is that it has 10x the electrochemical capacity of graphite. So there's a lot of capacity there if you can make it work. And we're finding that our material tops out right now at about 7x, which is 2,500 milliamp hours per gram, compared to 372 for graphite. So there's a tremendous opportunity in making that evolution. Keep in mind that lithium-ion batteries for the last 30 years have improved in capacity about 1.5 to 2% per year based upon process improvement and some other aspects of it, but no monumental, quantum changes. This would reflect somewhere in the neighborhood of a 50% improvement. To put that into context, you're looking at storage capacity roughly 20 as much as 50%, just based upon what I was talking about. It also means that you can do a lot more with your batteries if you look at the business case, is that you can do 30% less batteries, 30% less cells, with 30% reduction in volume, 30% volume weight. So those are all important things and really all form factors. Why the change right now? A couple of things. First of all, the California and a variety of other governmental institutions are mandating that we have to get over to a cleaner energy alternative. And lithium-ion batteries are really a cornerstone technology for making that happen for all types of, home storage application, cars, devices. Public sector funding, a lot of money being thrown at this space right now, and more on the way. Venture capital investment has spiked up dramatically. We've just closed our first VC round. And then the other thing is just global battery market. Right now, we're looking at 2024, $100 billion market for lithium-ion batteries, of which 25% of that is associated with the anode, and 15% of that total is anode material, which is what our market space is. Battery components, as I indicated, 15% is anode material. It's an addressable market of about $19.4 billion so in 2027. It's a large opportunity and a lot of players going after that. How we operate the E-cell material, as I said, is low cost. The other aspect.
30-second warning, okay?
Okay, great. Anyway, a low cost, simple process, which we provide to OEMs for multiple marketplaces, you can see. Have a very experienced staff, all industry veterans, about 7 ex-CEOs involved that are domain experts within their space. We have also, as other vendors have talked about, we have an advisory group that's Stellar, the head of the energy group at Argonne, the ex-chief battery chemist at GM, and others. We've been getting a lot of attention. We've won some awards. Of course, the timing here is that COVID hit in the middle and killed everything. And here's our timeline. We've just completed a relatively small round at 3.5. We're in a 10 million series seed round at the moment. Pilot manufacturing will be in place before the end of this year and commercial production next year. We will have evaluation cells out the end of this year and have broad participation and cooperation with a variety of industry players, Romeo Power in the commercial trucking space, working with Polaris Laboratories and some others that are on board. 5 key things to remember: our technology, because of its new approach, is swell tolerant. We have a cell structure that we actually swell into the cell instead of externally. Existing processes are leveraged. You can use current manufacturing capability and machinery. We have an exclusive license and patent in place, extensive leadership team, and a really large market opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Opening up the floor for questions.
Hey, Jerry, this is Josh here from Anzu Partners.
Yes.
I get a little bit jaded when I see increases in 30 to 50% in battery capacity and energy densities. We see a lot of different types of battery technologies come through here. Like most recently, we've talked to companies like Nanograph, who are also doing silicon anodes, and that's like this technology is the end all be all in the battery world right now. What specific engineering challenges are you trying to solve as you move forward in the next year?
The biggest, of course, in the silicon space is cracking and SEI formation. And so those are things that always have to be optimized. A lot of that is the integration with the cathode technology and whatever electrolyte. There's Wildcat and others like that, make their living optimizing electrolyte to allow silicon to basically flourish. So I think that that's the biggest intersection right now for us is electrolyte development specific to optimizing what we do. In terms of those gains, first keep in mind that we're using 100% silicon. So many of the vendors are down in 15, 20, 30, 40%. And so their capacity is going to be less than what we're offering. Our test cells right now are 2,500 milliamp hours per gram. So We've got a lot of energy, most of it unusable because of the cathode limitations.
And then what form factor are you guys operating with right now? Are you guys using
Our
coin cells? Or,
samples-
do you guys how you half cells?
Yeah, our samples that are going out in the fourth quarter are centimeter by centimeter single oil pouch cells.
Okay.
And we're doing pouch cells and coin cells, but the broad sampling, that'll be the format.
Go ahead, Dr. Grau.
Yeah, and we're collaborating people with a lot of experience. For example, Polaris Labs, that's doing some of our external engineering, has done over 40 silicon anode projects. So they've done bake-offs for various vendors. They've done additive research for other competing vendors. Their indication to us so far is that the performance that we're experiencing and the characteristics that we're in the upper tier are best of class in really every category. For example, we're at 91% first cycle efficiency. The norm for silicon is probably about 86 to 87. So we're pushing on all the variables to make this an attractive commercial product at a really good price.
Have you been interacting with Doug Morris up there at Polaris?
Doug Morris, yes, absolutely.
I had a conversation with him yesterday. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a very good guy. Yeah, we're also collaborating with PNNL and with Argonne, and we've got a couple others in the bag as well as ongoing retained research with Washington State University, actually teasing into the interaction of these materials with solid state electrolyte.
Hi, Jerry, this is Diana Grauer with Technique FMC. You're raising 10 million. Tell me about your use of funds. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to scale
Sure.
manufacturing? Are you going to hire more people? Are you going to build stuff? What are you going to do?
All of that. We're just signing the lease for 12,000 square feet of combined office, lab, and production space. And that will host, starting Q1 of next year, building out LRIP capacity. So we're getting past pilot manufacturing into the ability to scale up for commercial, at least small commercial applications. So being able to fully build that out, it has a functioning state-of-the-art lab in the space already, so we're not investing in a new lab. It's fitting out a few specialty equipment, but the LRIP will be built from scratch. We are adding a couple of key engineering personnel as we progress ourselves from being focused on the materials characteristics and producibility of the material. The next level, we sit both in the domain of materials science and battery science. And we're boosting our capabilities in the battery science team dramatically with at least 2 senior hires and probably more, as well as we're doing a long-term contract with Polaris to provide a couple of additional dedicated headcount of senior scientists.
Go ahead, Judy.
Great, thanks, Jerry. What is your business model going to be?
Our business model of record right now is licensing. And it's primarily the notion that, let's put it this way, if I'm going to walk into General Motors right now, we were founded in 2018, so we're a 3-year-old venture, and asking them to take a technology risk on a relatively small company, my chances of being successful on any scale other than a pilot are low. If I walk in with Showa Denka or Samsung or somebody like that, you do have the chances of making traction in those larger ventures. So we feel that some of these people will be the gateway to larger opportunities. That said, there's a lot of companies that would be interested in this type of material that have expressed that interest, that do not have the willingness or capability to go out and build anode materials. And we will have the capacity to do that, or have a partnership manufacturing capacity. So, but licensing is kind of the default, one, showing a willingness to do it, but also we're, going about, fully documenting our process, patent protection, trade secret, so that we can find some strategic partners that will be able to do that.
Thanks.
Wonderful. I think that kind of wraps it up. Thank you very much, Jerry, and great company, Excelix. Thank you for sharing, everybody who shared today. That was our last company for the session and the last company for the entire event. So just to recap, we had 14 companies pitching today under the open topic, also on the renewables and alternative energies, and lastly, power management and supporting systems. I'd like to thank all of our panelists that joined us today for the third session for power management and supporting systems. We had from Energy Foundry, Judy Lee. From NAVFAC, we had Dr. Bill Anderson. From Now Vertical Group, Dave Whitmire. From Lockheed Martin, we were joined by Ryan Hatcher. From Microsoft, Anna Roth. From Delmar Aerospace Corporation, Stanley Springer. From Technic FMC, Dr. Diana Grauer. From Army Futures Command, S.G. Grogan. And from Shimizu Corporation, Shuntaro Kano. And lastly, from Anzu Partners, Josh Stiley. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And just to recap of the last session of companies, we heard from Excelix, from Therm Exit, from SensorLink, from VIA, and ABM Nano. So that's 5 of the 14 companies that we heard from today. Just word to the wise, if you're interested in hearing about the other companies that you didn't get a chance to see pitch, be in touch with somebody from our team. Probably best point of contact is Asher Rudansky, Asher at Deep Tech Showcase. But you also feel free to reach out to us, Josh at deeptechshowcase.com, and also you have Yuval at deeptechshowcase.com. So thank you, everybody. We'll just keep we'll keep the chat going on for just a few more minutes if people want to interact through the chat and through private channels. And thank you, everybody who joined and made this an excellent event. We're looking forward to the next event, which is on August 19th. With focus on autonomous systems. So stay tuned for a monthly event and hearing from great companies like the ones we heard today. Thank you, everybody.